All right, I think we are live on YouTube. If you are in the chat, hopefully I am coming through loud and clear. Everything's looking good on this side. I guess even before diving into the podcast, I guess I can address for the YouTube side, because that is who is more relevant for. Obviously, last episode had technical snafu. Google Fiber apparently really sucks, at least in my area. I had some pretty dismal speeds, and it caused the live stream to crash. They set up like a couple hours before we were supposed to stream. Streamed, went through about an hour before it crashed, so I pulled that video because it just kind of, there was no way to finish it. I unfortunately didn't record the whole thing. I am recording now, though. Hopefully we can go without having any kind of issues technically, but in the future, I'm trying to make it a standard to record as well as live stream, just in case there is any other issues in the future. But we've been live streaming for a couple of years now, I think, maybe 2-3 years, and that's the first time we've had any major issues. So hopefully that was a once in a long time issue that won't happen again. Hello, Mike. Welcome to the live stream. So let's go ahead and dive into episode 26. Let me hit the intro and get the podcast side started, and we'll dive right in.
He who is ashamed of his geekery has forgotten the face of Stan Lee.
This is the podcast, Geekery Abides.
Hello and welcome to Geekery Abides. This is the geek podcast for me now. Here for episode 26. Now moving into the second quarter century mark for episode numbers at least. We hit our. It was kind of cool to hit our 25 episode mark to start the year. That's what I meant to say, but my mind is jumbling them all together, all the words together. It was kind of cool to hit that landmark. Of course, if I could have planned it better, I probably would have planned to hit the 25 at the tail end of last year instead of this year, but whatever. First of all, I am Tad, and I am here to host the show, talking about all things geekery. Let's go ahead and let me hit the email real quick. If you want to email the show, you can do that in a number of ways. I'm actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I may have forgot to check the email in the last couple days. So if anything came through recent, I will not have seen it, unfortunately. But if you want to email the show, you can do that over here. Shoot an email at Tad, which is TADD, at geekeryabides.com. That comes straight to me. And whether it's feedback on a show, you agree with me, disagree with me, show ideas, your own geekery that you want to share, anything, just go ahead and send emails. Looks like I just checked and there is nothing. I'm glad, because if there had been something that had come in the last couple days, I would have felt really bad about not having prepped to cover the email. But that is a way to contact the show. It is the January 26th. We are now finally on track for the year. We had, obviously, I was sick when we were supposed to record, which was, January 12th, 13th, somewhere in there. I was sick, so I had to delay it, the first episode to last week. And then now here today is finally where we are back on track. This is where we were supposed to be recording ultimately going into the year. So it's glad to be back on track. So I got a couple notes. So last episode, I Obviously, we had some technical issues, but if you went and listened on the podcast at the tail end, I threw out and said that this episode we'd be talking about Coen Brothers movies. I actually forgot to put the title in the YouTube, but I'm actually kind of glad because turns out I am going to audible that. So this episode is going to be a little bit different. It's basically going to be I have a ranking, watching, reading, playing. And then it is basically going to be news the rest of the way because there's a lot of news to cover, and some of it is stuff that I would like to discuss maybe at a little bit more length. And I think by the time I got through all that, I just don't know that there would be as much time for Coen Brothers discussion, as well as honestly, I'd probably like to throw on a couple Coen Brothers movies before doing that episode just to refresh myself. And because of the delayed episode last week, we've only had a week since the last one. So I have I'm a little bit less prepped than normal. But even if we had the 2-week break with all the news that we have, it is kind of unreal how much news is going on. So Mike in the chat, yeah, as well. Thank you for mentioning that. Also like and leave a comment here on the video if you're here on the YouTube side. If you're listening on the podcast, I guess I need to probably get some announcements. I don't think I ever really cover that stuff on this show. I think we've kind of dropped the ball on that overall. But yeah, if you want to email, I've already mentioned that. But if you want to like, subscribe, all that stuff on your podcast app, we'd appreciate that. And then, yeah, on the YouTube side, leave comments, all that fun stuff. Even if you're not live here in the chat like Mike is, you can comment in the future, and I try to come in and see those comments in the future and stuff if that's a thing as well. So so that's what we got going for this episode. I just wanted to mention right off the bat since I did have to kind of call an audible. But yeah, like I said, even if we had a 2-week gap between episodes, I don't know with all this news if there would be ample time to even touch on the Coen Brothers. I mean, even with getting enough time, we probably won't be able to spend enough time in one episode for them because they deserve a lot more than one episode. But so we'll kick the Coen Brothers episode to next time. That will be in a fortnight from now. So let's go ahead and dive on in. Let's see, I already got the email covered. So next up, watching, reading, playing. What have you been watching, reading, playing? What have you been up to? So for me, that is, I'm still watching Seinfeld. I am actually in striking distance now. I've got, I think 3 episodes left. I was just looking between doing the Patreon hangout for Dark Tower Palaver earlier in the afternoon. I had like an hour and a half or something. I watched an episode of Seinfeld, and I went through and looked at what I had ahead. I think I've got 2 proper episodes and then the finale, because it's kind of weird the way the Seinfeld works. So they have at the tail end, they had the finale, which is a 2-parter, and I know some people that was controversial because like it ended up it's not really a full-on clip show, but there's a lot more of like callbacks to the whole series, and it had a unique story, but I don't know, there's some people that complained that it felt too much like a clip show. But what's funny is right before they did the 2-part finale, there was actually a 2-part clip show that they have. So I'm gonna obviously skip those because clip shows are stupid, especially if you're binging through a show. But yeah, so I've basically got 1-2 episodes and then the finale. So I'll be done with Seinfeld probably easily by the next time we record. It's good to revisit that show. I've always been a fan of that one. But I also watched Echo. I think it was last weekend. Or no, this weekend. No, this weekend just started. Would have had to have been last weekend. It was probably Sunday. I think it was Saturday night into Sunday last weekend. I was a little bit delayed, just podcast stuff or whatever. And I knew they dropped all 5 episodes right away, so I knew I'd be able to binge it. So Saturday night after finishing, did the podcast, had dinner and all that fun stuff, and then went and watched an episode of Echo, and then I think the morning I went and watched the last 4 episodes pretty much in a go. I have to say I really love that show. I know it's kind of becoming popular now to kind of shit on Marvel and comics and comic book movies, but I thought Echo was an absolutely incredible show. I loved her in Hawkeye. I think she's an incredible character. She's just a really compelling character for me. She's deaf, she's missing a leg, but she's just an absolute badass. As well as I love just the kind of going into the indigenous community stuff, which she's tied to, as well as Wilson Fisk being involved, makes it absolutely. Honestly, it might be one of my favorite shows that Marvel's put out up to this point. I know it's only 5 episodes. I wish it would have been a little bit longer, but I really enjoyed it. A couple cool cameos in there as well. But I really, really, really dug that show quite a bit. As well as it was funny because the guy that played her dad, which I would have seen in Hawkeye, because she's tied to Hawkeye. Hawkeye kills her father when he's doing the whole Ronin thing in the Endgame Infinity War realm, where he kind of goes nuts and becomes kind of a fucking killer. So he was the same actor in that as well, but I don't know why it didn't click, but it did while watching Echo, as I kept thinking, like, who the fuck is this guy? He's so goddamn familiar. I know him from something. And like I could picture him like holding a gun from the previous thing, but I couldn't fucking place it. So I finally looked it up, and he is Crow Daddy from Doctor Sleep, the Doctor Sleep movie, the brilliant Doctor Sleep movie. So he's a wonderful actor. He did a great job in both Doctor Sleep and in Echo, because he has a part there, because he's dead, but there's some flashbacks with him and stuff. So really enjoyed Echo. Really wanted to give a huge shout out to that show and tell people, even if you're getting a little, I don't know, because I know a lot of people are not even that are like hardcore like trashing on comic book movies, but there's been some people that have been kind of complaining about like the whole Marvel television, just because it feels like it's so much to have to consume, and like you kind of have to pick and choose what you have time for, which I totally understand. All I'm saying is, one, this one's shorter, there's only 5 episodes, but 2, I really think this show is worth a watch. It is a little bit more mature rated. It isn't as nice. This is kind of in the newer realm, where I know they just put all the Hulu, they're merging Hulu and Disney Plus together, so there's now stuff on technically in the Disney Plus app that's mature rated, but I think this is one of the first original content things that's been put on Disney Plus that actually has kind of a mature bend to it. There's some gore and some kills and some pretty brutal stuff, which I always appreciate. So and then in the chat, Mike says, about to start Fallout New Vegas, watching random stuff out of my watch list and still in between books. So Fallout, are you talking, you're playing the game Fallout New Vegas? Because I know they're doing a Fallout show, but I don't think that's starting yet, and I don't think it's Vegas, right? You're talking the game there. I need to dive into those games at some point, the Fallout games. And then also I did start watching True Detective Night Country. I think episode 2 aired last weekend. Episode 3 will start Sunday. Episode 3 airs Sunday, so I've been watching that, enjoying the fuck out of it. Jodie Foster is absolutely killing it. I remember back when the first season of True Detective came out, I was super ingrained in like the online community as people are speculating, and there was a lot of speculation that the first season was going to go like fucking hardcore H.P. Lovecraft cosmic horror. Obviously the first season ended up kind of panning out. It ended up being more just down to earth, a serial killer. There were some larger like conspiratorial elements, but it wasn't like a Cthulhu coming out of the fucking sky like some people were expecting. But this season I'm actually thinking that it might actually be moving into the realm of a little bit more supernatural. Again, I'm saying that with some trepidation because I thought the same thing in season 1 and it didn't happen, but this one is feeling very supernatural to me. So we'll see as it unfolds, but I've been really digging it. And then Mike says, yes, Fallout New Vegas is the game in between Fallout 3 and 4. Okay, cool. The show starts in April. Yeah, that's what I thought. I was thinking in my head, like, I know the show is this year, but I was like, I still feel like it's at least a few months away. So I just wanted to be clear because I have not followed the production much of the Fallout stuff. I think a lot of it happened probably before we were doing this show too heavily, because I don't feel like I've seen a lot of news headlines and stuff like to cover on this show. Not to mention I'm not as into it, so I don't necessarily know what's relevant and not to cover as much as stuff that I actually have watched. But I do want to play the Fallout games. I think I mentioned it once before. I played the original Fallout that was like a top scroll RPG or top view RPG, like ghetto ass Windows 95 era stuff. And I always remember fighting rats outside of a Fallout shelter and stuff, like irradiated giant rats and stuff. But I need to play some of the more modern games because I know they're since I've fallen out of video games heavily. I mean, back in the day I used to be pretty plugged in, but I feel like as I've gotten older I've fallen away, and there's like a number of games that I know that have massive reputations that I've not played. Before I got my PS5, I knew like the Spider-Man games, but I also knew like the Last of Us, the Fallout series and then Borderlands are like the massive ones that I kind of know have reputations as being like killer games. Not to mention all the later Resident Evil games. I know a lot of people hype the fuck out of those. I'm a player of the original 3 games. I haven't played any of the more modern games, but yeah, there's a lot of really cool fucking video games. I really need to spend more time in the video game realm than I actually do. And Mike's also says start with New Vegas if you dive in. That's actually a good one. I'm glad for that because it was funny. It was probably I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, somewhere in there. I was kind of had some money burning a hole in my pocket, and I was wanting to dive into some stuff. And the other big one that I've never really played is Assassin's Creed. And I remembered way back when Peter and I lived together, he was playing the original game, which was brand new at the time, or newer at the time. It was the only game that was out. And so I hit him up. I'm like, hey, dude, did you ever continue on to the Assassin's Creed games? He's like, no, I haven't. I was like, God damn it. I'm like, I kind of want to like dive in, but I have no fucking clue where to dive into. So with something like Fallout, it's good to get a recommendation on where to jump in, because some of these series, as a newcomer, you look at and it's just like, it isn't like the old days where it was like, oh, Halo 1, 2, 3, whatever, like they're in order. Like, no, these things jump all over the fucking timeline. There's like prequels and there's like whatever, and it's just, it feels like it's almost like Star Wars with movies. You know, people always ask, what order should you watch Star Wars in? I feel like there's a lot of video game series that are that way too, where it's like there's an ideal way to dive in or not to dive in and play in order. So generally, if I absolutely don't know, I'll just go through release order. I feel like that's usually the best. But if I do get recommendations, I will definitely throw that away. That's usually my last resort, where I'm like, I have no clue how to do this. Fine, I'll just do it in the release order, because that's the way everyone else played it for the most part. So it's good to get recommendations on that. And I do know there's, from what I understand, isn't there at least one Fallout that was pretty unpopular? It wasn't very well received, if I remember right. Again, I can't keep track of it all, but it's good to know that Vegas is one of the good ones, and to start there when I eventually dive into those games. And then the last thing for me, watching wise, I actually went and rewatched episode 5 of Ahsoka, titled Shadow Warrior. That was the big flashback episode with Anakin's Force Ghost, or not Force Ghost, whatever it was with Anakin and Ahsoka. So I decided just on a whim, I was like, you know what, I'm fucking really feeling that episode. So I threw it on, watched it, and I was like, just, yeah, hook it to my veins, as Mr. Gumble says.
Just hook it to my veins!
Mike says Fallout 3 is the least liked. Okay, that's probably the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, I don't know. I just know that kind of being plugged into like Reddit and Twitter and stuff, every once in a while I hear people shit on something, and when it's something like, if they're shitting on a specific Fallout game, I'm a lot of times I can't really track exactly, or I can't remember exactly which one they're talking about, but I'll kind of remember that there was like a general vibe about one of the games, and then I lose it over time, because it doesn't mean anything to me, because it's all just one giant blob of games that I'm unfamiliar with. So yeah, so that's it for watching for me. Reading, I'm in the non-fiction realm. I'm reading an American history book that is written by Oliver Stone, so one of my favorite filmmakers. Decided to dive into it and see kind of what it has to go there in terms of non-fiction. But I am kind of vibing for some fiction, so once this is done, I'm definitely going to be diving into some more fiction stuff, because it's been at least a month probably since I've done any fiction reading. So, and then playing, I have been playing MLB The Show, as well as RoboCop Rogue City, enjoying both of those games quite a bit. I'm a huge baseball fan, getting way more into baseball than I have been in a while. I've been a casual fan, and I love the sport, but I haven't followed it as heavily over the last couple of years as I did when I was a little bit younger, but I'm getting way more into it. So yeah, and then RoboCop, like, grew up on that movie, so this game's been a lot of fun. So that's kind of what I've been watching, reading, playing for me. I know a lot hasn't changed because, again, it's only been a week since we last met together here for the show, and also it's been a busy week too in terms of work and stuff, so I haven't had as much time to, I guess, watch, read, play, all that kind of stuff as I would like to generally have. So let's go on to the next one, which is the tier ranking. So I've been, obviously I always come up with different ideas on these. This one was just not necessarily, this one isn't entirely random. I have been pretty much since, okay, This one is going to be the Beatles. It says it on the screen if you're watching, as well as if you're listening. You haven't read that because you can't read that because you're listening. But I've been a big Beatles fan. I dove into them really heavy when they got onto streaming. I, of course, heard some songs because you can't be alive without hearing something of theirs. But I really got heavy into them, like deep diving when they hit streaming a number of years back, 5 or 6 years ago. And I think consistently, like on Spotify, on my year-end wraps and stuff, they're always in my top 5. A number of times, at least 2 or 3 years, they've been my number 1 artist. And honestly, it was when I went to Vegas. I'm sorry, when I went to Arizona with Hayden in December to go see a comedian down there. He was playing an album, and it just for some reason re-sparked my obsession with them, and I've honestly listened to very little other than them. I've been dabbling a little bit in podcasts, and even my history book I'm reading, I'd probably be way more through it, but I keep turning off the word, like podcast or audiobooks. I wish there was like a genre that can encompass both of those, but I've been listening to way less of those even at work than just throwing on some music. So I just figured, you know what, for the fuck of it, let's go through and do the tier ranking for the 13 Beatles albums. And I know this is a weird thing because the way they did their records was definitely weird. They did a lot, especially, and it was different in England versus America. There was a lot of singles, and then in America, some of the singles ended up getting on some records. But in like Britain, there's some of their major songs that have never been put on on actual albums, so they're only singles. It's really fucking messy with them. It's not anywhere like it is today where it's all organized. So I just grabbed the 13. I think I went on there. It's basically, so I created a number of years ago, I created on Spotify a playlist, the Beatles discography, where I tried to build a chronological thing going through all their stuff. I threw in a couple singles because they're not on albums even in America, and Mike in the chat says even Roland knows Hey Jude, and that's one of them. For instance, Hey Jude is not on any of the traditional Beatles albums. Of course there's some greatest hits albums, but I generally don't put those on massive lists like that because I like to do that. I've done it with Johnny Cash, I've done it with a couple different artists where I went through and made like a massive 20 plus hour playlist of like most of the hits. Like for Johnny Cash, it's most of the hits in order from like his earliest hit till like his final song. And the Beatles, I basically just went through the records in order and made it's like a 25 hour something playlist. And I generally use that as my guide to the albums to do. So I just decided to rank it off of those. So that's what we're doing. Mike says, do you think they would have reunited if Lennon wasn't killed? That's actually I was actually thinking about that sometime over the course of the last week. I was thinking even Led Zeppelin was able to get brought back together a few times since John Bonham's death, for a couple big event things. Some of them have gone well, some of them have gone very, very poorly. I forget one of the ones, if it was Live Aid or Farm Aid. There's one of those big aid shows that they did, Led Zeppelin did, that was such a fucking travesty that I think they've even pretty much requested it to be never included on collections for that event because it was just bad. It didn't go well. There's even bands like that you almost think would never come back together because they lost a member. The Beatles, so I was thinking that as I was like, how much different would the world look if John Lennon wasn't killed in the early 80s? And yeah, I honestly kind of wonder, and I actually found a reel because I've been, Instagram and all those places read your mind. So I'm starting to get Beatles stuff, and then you like one of them and then you start getting more of it. And I found one where they asked, I think it was John Lennon before he died, actually. They're like, have you guys ever talked about getting back together? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you know what? He's like, honestly, he's like, I think all of us have had times where we've thought about getting back together. He's like, but it seems like every time one of us has the idea, it doesn't jive with the other ones. So we've just never really aligned to where all 4 of us are ready to come back together. And he's like, it probably wouldn't be a tour or anything. It'd probably just be, let's go to a studio and make a record, which in my mind, in the what if universes, give me that what if universe, because I would love to see what, call it the mid to late 80s, if not early 90s. Imagine what the Beatles dropping a new record. I mean, look at the way the world's reacted with this new song that was, rebuilt from some bad recordings and some AI stuff. The Beatles worked together with Yoko Ono to build this that last song that just came out the tail end of last year, and it kind of blew people's minds. It topped the charts in England and some other places. That being fresh in my mind too, I just thought, God, what would that look like? Because I really do think that just even from that reel, having John say that all of us at individual times have thought it'd be a good idea, but it has just never jived. I think really truthfully, at some point, fate probably would have come together where all four of them would have had, that moment all at the same time, which is a really amazing thought to think about. But let's go ahead and dive right in. So I am a massive fan. Again, the tier rankings, since I'm only ranking 13, none of these are necessarily bad. Just because something falls down in the D section doesn't mean I think it's a bad album. It just means that of all these albums I love, these are the ones that maybe I love a little bit less than the others. I will also say, I always pay attention to my tier rankings. Not that I try to do it, but I always kind of feel like in general, the way things distribute, Gaussian theory is that everything would be, would distribute on a bell curve. And I've always kind of watched my tier rankings. I've just kind of like made a list in like a word processor and like kind of then just divided them all up. And then when I actually start doing the pictures, I like just then imagine the bell curve, and it almost always works out to where there is a bell curve, where it's like the S tier and the D tier, there's far less of them, but then in the A, B, and C tier, there's always a lot more. This one broke that. There is no bell curve here. But then again, the Beatles are different. And like Mike mentioned, even Roland knows Hey Jude. I made a joke, I'm sorry. I was going to make a joke actually, and then my freaking phone thing died. I was looking at Reddit, and I was going to post a joke. I think on one of the Dark Tower subreddits. And then my phone freaking refreshed the whole thing, and I lost, and it was back to the homepage of Reddit, and I was like, whatever, it's not worth it. But I was gonna say that because obviously one of the big controversies for them was I think it was John Lennon that said that the Beatles are bigger than Jesus, and it turned into a big old controversy. And I was gonna say that something along the lines of, well, of course Roland's World has the Beatles. I mean, if it has Jesus, of course it's gonna have something a lot bigger than Jesus, like the Beatles. I was gonna post something like that on the Dark Tower subreddit, because I feel like you've got to have the exact perfect audience for that joke, because like Hayden, my good friend Hayden, he's a massive Beatles fan. He would get the Jesus Beatles reference, but he hasn't read enough of the Dark Tower. So like you feel like you just got to have that perfect alignment of people's knowledge for that joke to land. But that was a joke that came to mind. So along with what Mike was saying there, even Roland knows Hey Jude. But let's go ahead and start in the D section. That with this one, I start off with the album with the Beatles. It is one of their earlier records. There's some people that love to just kind of throw out that, the early Beatles sucks, like they're just like whatever. I don't buy into that at all. I think some of their early stuff is really good, and I really think it's cool to look at their earlier stuff and then compare it to their later stuff and just kind of see how they evolve. That's what I love about my playlist is it kind of like flows and you kind of see as the band evolves over time. But yeah, this is in the American realm. It is the second one in my playlist, and it's got a couple good songs, but overall I definitely prefer the hippie era Beatles more so than like the clean cut almost Elvis era looking Beatles. There's some really cool stuff, and they're still tight musicians in the early days, but it is not my preference. I do prefer the hippier look on the Beatles. Not necessarily that's a look, but the sound that goes with it as well. So then that's it for the D section. Let's go up to the C section, and there we have Please Please Me, and that one is, I have my Spotify open, and I'm just kind of looking at this. So this one is actually the first American record. I do have one thing listed before that, which is She Loves You, which is their first big. That's the thing that really put them on the map across the board. But that was a single. But Please Please Me is their early record, their earliest one. It has Twist and Shout. It has a couple of really good songs, but again, it's the early Beatles era. I do love it, but if I'm ever going to look at my playlist and just like not listen to the whole thing, but just dive in, I'm usually not going to dive in at the beginning and then cut off midway. I'm probably going to start midway and then listen to the end, because I do love the old school, or the new school, more new school, quote unquote, versus the old school. And then that is it for C. I only have one on each of those. And this one is a little bit of a cheat. In the first one in the B section, and that is the Love album. And this is actually the one that kind of re-sparked my obsession with them recently. This is the one that Hayden played almost the whole time we were down in Arizona. I mean, we didn't drive a shit ton, so we probably only went through the album like 1.5 times. But it was interesting because it was like I heard the songs. I'm like, okay, I know this Beatles song, but then it was like different. I'm like, what the fuck? And I think it was like midway through the it was second or third drive, and we were midway through the record. I'm like, Hayden, what the hell hell is this? I'm like, these are Beatles songs, but they're like not anything like I know them. Like, what the fuck? They're like remixes. He's like, yeah, it's the Love record. He's like, it's for their Cirque du Soleil show in Vegas. This is what they made musically. So it's like an interesting thing. They're like, they cobble and this, I know this sounds bad, but they cobble like different songs together and stuff. So sometimes you'll have one track that's got 3 songs, but it's mixed together so beautifully that it's just it's wonderful. I've adored it. I added it to my list at the very end. But yeah, I highly recommend it to people. I know this one is kind of rough, especially to rank it against all the others because it is a best of, and it's always tough to let a ringer in like a best of album because it puts the rest to shame. But it did fall in the B realm for me, but it is really good. And I recommend it to anyone. Next one is A Hard Day's Night. This one is back to their this is about when things this is their third album, and this is where you start to see more of an evolution. I mean, Hard Day's Night's a great song. You got Can't Buy Me Love. You've got a couple really good songs in there. I don't know. I this is a fun one. I really enjoy this record. Again, not that I don't like the earlier stuff, but there's just kind of this evolution for them, and this is where you start to see their evolution. You start to see them a little bit break away musically from that, just kind of like, we're playing like songs that Elvis might play or people like Elvis might play. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's just a little bit different than what most people think of with the Beatles. And then next up in the B section, the last one for the B section is Beatles for Sale. And this one is the next record after A Hard Day's Night. So again, you're kind of seeing the evolution as they progress here. This one, you got some really good hits. You do have them covering Rock and Roll Music, which is an old 50s era song, which is kind of cool. But 8 Days a Week, Every Little Thing is one of my favorite songs that are like maybe a little bit lesser known songs. There's is it a timbor or timbre? There's some sort of like big drum that they used in that one that is one of my favorites because it's got this really bassy thing along with the chorus. I love it. I adore it. And then so that's a really good one. I really love it. You're starting to see a little bit more, again, more evolution. But now we're getting into the hardcore, the top end. You got A tier, and it's going to start off in the A tier with Help. Again, we're just moving right along. After Beatles for Sale is Help. We got the song Help. You've got Ticket to Ride is great. Act Naturally is great. Let's see. Yesterday is one of their all-time fucking bangers. I can't remember. I think it was 2 years ago. The Beatles are my number one artist on the Spotify Wrap, and Yesterday was far and away my most listened to song. I think it's one of their most beautiful songs. And I think that it's one that, honestly, a lot of people, there's a lot of reasons to point at different things that caused the breakup of the Beatles, but there's actually a pretty compelling theory that Yesterday is actually one of the bigger things that potentially broke the Beatles up because it was such a massive hit, and it honestly got into the head of John Lennon because, of course, Lennon and McCartney put both of their names on every song those two did. So there was, for a lot of fans in the early days, they didn't really know, so they would go up to John and thank him for doing Yesterday, but in his head, he knew, I didn't do that. That was Paul's song, and I saw a quote that kind of added to this theory that, Yesterday kind of got into John's head and kind of made him almost compete with Paul, which is John's obviously great, but Paul is a master at a lot of things. And it was actually a quote from a musician that was when Imagine came out in the solo era. And he basically came to this musician and said, hey, let me show you this song. Like, I think it's something that's actually as good as Yesterday. And then he had him listen to Imagine and stuff. And then after he's like, oh yeah, this is a good song and stuff. He's like, all right, but is it better than Yesterday? Or so it feels like there's like a little bit of a competition that may have actually been there's multiple reasons the Beatles broke up. Certainly there's no one reason, but I do think that Yesterday is one of the most amazing songs, and I think John may have kind of always wanted to live up to songs like that. So that is that one. Next up we've got I don't have enough screen space sometimes. The next one is Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul, this one is actually the one I've been digging on the most recently. Drive My Car, Norwegian Wood, let's see, Michelle, let's see, what else? Girl, I've been really loving the song Girl recently. There's just a number of really cool songs on Rubber Soul. I'm actually need to buy that one on vinyl here pretty soon. And then the next one, and actually it's funny because this one is not really thought of as one of their best records, but when you actually look at and it's Magical Mystery Tour, when you actually go look at the track listings for this actually may be their most prolific album when it comes to just hits. This one has let's see, I Am the Walrus, which is great. Hello, Goodbye, Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane, Baby You're a Rich Man, All You Need Is Love. Like, there is a whole fucking stack. Like, there's a lot of albums that have a lot of good songs, but that one is just stacked with, like, when you look to the best of the best, like, there's a lot of them coming out of that album. So Magical Mystery Tour is awesome. Next up is this one actually hurt me a little bit because I almost had this in S tier, but I ended up bumping it down to the top of the A tier. Well, not top, because I don't like to. It's in the tiers. I don't rank it in the tiers. They're all the same. A's are equal. But this was a cusp. This one almost made it up to the S tier, and this is the White Album. This one is obviously one of their bigger albums back in the USSR. Dear Prudence, Obada Dila, let's see, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. This Blackbird, there's so many fucking songs on this one, as well as a little bit more of the obscure shit that they started doing, the avant-garde type stuff. I love this record. It's so good. It's so kind of out there. I remember at one point I was driving around with some people and this playlist was on and it started getting to this realm, and the person's like, oh cool, like this is the what did he say, psychedelics Beatles or hallucinogens Beatles, something, like, and he's like, yeah, it feels like every Beatles album has like a drug that they were doing when they made it, and he's like, this is when they really start to get weird. So, as well as obviously, if you're into like the serial killer history stuff, this is the one that sparked Charles Manson. He thought God was talking to him through Beatles records. And then Helter Skelter is on the White Album. And, he thought Helter Skelter was the end of the world. And then there was like Revolution #1. There was Piggies that he thought was referring to all the uninitiated masses. Like Kill the Piggies was like one of his things he would say. So there was all this fucking nut job shit with him, and a lot of it ended up coming down to the White Album. Obviously he was crazy or whatever, but like if there was one of the inspirations for some of his madness, not that it caused his madness, but things that went into his madness existed, and then an outside force came in that started putting other shit in his head, and it was reading bullshit into the Beatles White Album. So Mike, LOL, Manson was crazy. Yeah, exactly. And I guess what I'm trying to make sure is I make sure it's clear that I'm not trying to say that the music had anything to do with anything Manson did. He was already a fucking nut job, but in his nut job mind, he thought God was talking to the Beatles. And the White Album is one of the most discussed things in his trial. When you go through and read like books on the Manson trial, there's way more talk about the White Album by the Beatles than pretty much any other pop culture thing. So that one, it's a wonderful record. I know some people think it's a little bloated, but I love every note in there. So then getting up to the S tier now, and again, I know there's this is probably the heaviest S tier that I've done. But Abbey Road is #1, probably the most iconic cover in music history. I can't imagine. I mean, on the Dark Tower show, I have one that's a spoof of the Abbey Road, and it's the quartet. It's one of the most iconic covers, if not the most iconic cover of all time. But you got Come Together, Maxwell Silver Hammer, Octopus Gardens, which, yes, I know some of these weird Ringo Starr things, songs people shit on, but I fucking love some of the weird shit like that. And Ringo is a saint. So, there's some fun stuff on Abbey Road. Let's see. Yeah. Love Abbey Road. It's a banger for sure. Then next up, Let It Be. I know this one's getting a lot more attention. Not that it didn't already have a shitload of attention because it's a wonderful record, but this is the one they're recording in the Peter Jackson documentary. So this is what would be the last Beatles album of all time. Of course, we'd get the single that comes out later in the 2023 and stuff, but the last time they were together, recording together, was on this record, Let It Be, which of course, you got Across the Universe, which is great. You've got Let It Be, which is, I think, next to Yesterday, maybe one of their finest songs of all time. You've got The Long and Winding Road, which is an incredible fucking song. You got Get Back, which is incredible. Just such a wonderful song, wonderful album, top to bottom. So much good shit in there. I love it. There's also, I wanted to mention, there's actually, because they did, I think it was Phil Spector produced this album, and there's a lot of stuff that he did that the Beatles weren't necessarily into. So they actually ended up down the road. They did one called Let It Be Naked, and it's where they basically took down all the Phil Spector shit out of it, and basically it's the record as they would have had it done, because he got a little bit more flashy and stuff with some effects and all that kind of stuff in the music. I actually created a playlist. It's my one of the things I'm proudest of naming in terms of what would you say, like quirky naming or creative naming, because I created a playlist that was basically Let It Be and then Let It Be Naked, but it's every track back to back. So you see here the original version, then the Beatles naked version, and then it just bounces like track one, track 2. And I titled it Let It Be, compared. And I'm pretty proud of that because I feel like that's really clever. So I do recommend that if you're a Beatles fan. If you've never heard that, it's an interesting thing. I do think there's some areas that Phil Spector is better, but there are some areas that I think their version of it is better. And then of course the top two, this is why I say they're not rankings, because I cannot rank these. I always say leave it to the philosophers to come up with which of these two is better. But it is Revolver. Number two, it's not a top list with numbering wise, but the second to last one on this is Revolver. This one is just a banger. I think if you would have asked me a year ago, I probably would have said this is my favorite album of theirs. But again, I really am not gonna put myself in that position. But you got Taxman, Eleanor Rigby, let's see, Yellow Submarine, just so many good songs. Good Day Sunshine, let's see, yeah, just great. I mean, there's great songs all throughout, but I'm just hitting some of the big ones, which of course leaves the one and only the Sgt. Pepper's as number one, or again, not number one, the last one on the A tier, on the S tier. These are the God tier ones, and there with Sgt. Pepper's, of course. You got the Sgt. Pepper song. You got Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. You got When I'm 64, Lovely Rita, which is another one that actually Charles Manson fixated on. I know this isn't the White Album, but he fixated on that. One of his family, he started calling Rita. He changed her name to Rita so that he could call her Lovely Rita. And then A Day in the Life, wonderful song as well. Great stuff. Love the Beatles. Again, I know this one breaks my whole bell curve, but because there's just so much good stuff. But that's my tier ranking. I did want to kind of go through that just because I've been absolutely obsessing with the Beatles. I probably listened to through my playlist 3 times in the last in this month since January, maybe 3 or 4 times through, which again, considering it's a as long of a playlist it is, that is no small feat. What is that? It is oh god, it isn't as long as I thought it was. It's 212 songs, but it's only 9 hours and 49 minutes. So yeah, I was thinking it was way longer. I think I'm thinking yeah, I don't know what I'm thinking actually. So yeah, still not, it's almost a 10-hour playlist. I've been through it a number of times recently because I've been obsessing with them. So that is it for my tier ranking. So now I'm going to get into the news. Like I said earlier, there's a shitload of news, so it is going to take up the rest of the episode, but I think it is worth it. There's a lot of really fun stuff to cover, including some stuff I wanted to talk at a little bit more length than we usually do. A lot of times I know I hit and run on some of these topics, but there's a couple topics I really wanted to dive into. So let's go ahead. Let me get the slide figured out here. And funny enough, we actually have one that I almost didn't need to change the slide. I had to change it the tiniest bit because it's almost a repeat of last time, although it's different content. Rachel Brosnahan, it talks about her Lois Lane as well as Superman Legacy. It was funny because it was last episode she was asked at the Golden Globes or something like that. One of these award shows, she was on the red carpet. She was asked about the upcoming Superman movie. She is the the second star. I mean, Lois Lane next to Superman is probably the next biggest star. She is again a couple weeks later, and she is now at the Associated Press grabbed her on the red carpet of the Critics' Choice Awards, and they talked to her about Superman, and I have some quotes from it that I think are really awesome. She says, quote, "We have big shoes to fill, but we're excited to try to fill them. I think the best part about working on this has been that from the top to bottom, from James, which is James Gunn, to Peter Safran, and everyone at DC, and David, which is David Corenswet, which is Superman, we're all just nerds for this stuff, which that makes me happy as a Superman fan. So many actors just, punch the clock, so to speak. I mean, I know they're always artistic and they put a lot into their jobs, but it's always something different when they're actually fans involved with something they're fans of. I think that we're seeing that with Star Wars. There's like some stuff that you're seeing out of Star Wars that it just feels so much more special than a lot of movies, because a lot of the people that are filmmakers and actors, they might be filmmakers and actors because of Star Wars. So now when they're able to work on Star Wars, there's just an attention to detail and a care that goes along with that. So I'm really excited that she's saying that her David, James, Peter, all the people kind of at the top level, as well as DC themselves, are all huge nerds for it. I would assume DC people are. But then she goes on, another quote here: "There's so much to love and care, and there's so much love and care that's being taken to make this film, both a film that honors the source material and also justifies making another one," which that one I love hearing, although I will say it's been 11 years since the last Superman movie, and a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of that last Superman movie. And when you go before that, the Superman movie before that was 2006. So I would say in a realm where in that time we've had 3 Batmans since 2006 at least. We've had 2 Supermans in that time, but we've had 3 Batmans. We've had how many Jokers now? Like, it just feels like Batman and Joker getting a lot of play. And honestly, Superman, as a Superman fan, I can tell you, Superman fans have been a little bit starving for content. So I don't know that they need to justify another one as hard as maybe some other people might. As a Superman fan, I know I'm biased, but that's the way I think. Then separately, she was talking to Entertainment Tonight. I don't know if this is at the same event, but the article mentioned this together, and I thought it was a cool quote too. She says, "I've really enjoyed I enjoyed the collaboration with James Gunn so far. Every single person involved with this production is such a perfect nerd for Superman. We all grew up watching the movies, and some of us grew up reading the comics," the actor said. "I feel it's being made with so much love. This Superman will have a sense of humor. We're excited to both put our own spin on things, but also honor the material that we love so much." And then the last thing that I have from her, she was asked to describe her take on Lois Lane in 3 words, and Brosnahan responded with feisty, dare I say marvelous, and fiercely intelligent. So I don't know if that's 3 words, certainly 3 thoughts, but that last one there is 2 words, so that would be 4 words. But feisty, marvelous, and fiercely intelligent, and again, music to my ears as a Superman fan. That sounds perfect. So excited for that, coming out in 2025, I believe, July of 2025. Cannot wait for that. Next up, we have Pedro Pascal dropping out of a horror movie. And reportedly, he is dropping out of this horror movie called Weapons because his commitments to Fantastic Four. This is huge because we still have not really heard official confirmation that he is Reed Richards in Fantastic Four. Now, I will say I do not doubt that he is. I think all of the sources that have reported it are very credible sources. They're bigger sources. It isn't just these madmen in the wilderness just freaking out on their little blogs and making shit up all the time. There are plenty of those on the internet. This is coming from some high level stuff. It does sound like I'm like 90, probably 98% sure he is our Reed Richards. But there has been no official announcement. So to see the reports that he had to drop out of this horror movie because of Fantastic Four is exciting. I guess I will also say too, so we covered Superman. Now we're kind of moving into Marvel realm, which is, I'm trying to like bunch this stuff together. So I've got a bunch of Marvel stuff. We got Pedro here, drop out of this movie, but because of Fantastic Four. So I just wanted to at least point that out, that we are talking some Marvel for a second. The next up, this is a fun one. Robert Downey Jr. Says that some of his best work was in the Marvel movies, but he does say that it won't get recognized because of the genre. So he was on Rob Lowe's podcast, and he said, and he's basically talking about, so Rob Lowe kind of shits on Marvel a little bit, especially new Marvel, and he just like whatever, and just says like, oh, they fucked everything up, like, you know, at some point they're going to come back to you and you should just tell them like you want $1 gajillion to come back and fix it for them and stuff. He kind of is a little bit more like diplomatic or whatever, but then he starts talking about kind of his own reaction to like moving out of the Marvel realm after Tony Stark was killed. He says, I felt so exposed after being in the cocoon of Marvel, where I think I did some of my best work that I will ever do, but it was a little bit unnoticed because of the genre. Says I did myself a favor because the rug was pulled out so definitively out from under me, and all the things that I was leaning on as opposed to what my understanding of confidence and security was. Boy, did they evaporate, and it rendered me teachable. So that it's just kind of an interesting thing to see that, like, you know, it is almost like a security blanket of Marvel, and he feels that is some of his best work that he's probably ever going to do in his career. He even kind of uses that in the future tense too, where that is probably going to be hard to beat. But he does say that it will be probably won't get the recognition because of the genre, which is a damn shame. As a geek, of course, for me, I don't take it as personal as some people. I feel like there's a lot of people that are fighting pretty hard against kind of the disrespect with comic book movies. But for me, as a longtime horror fan, I feel like it's just built into my DNA to just see the shit that I really love get kind of shit on and disrespected, because it's just so normal for horror. So I'm just like letting it roll off my shoulders for the most part. But I will fight back at times with people and argue with people when they try to like discredit comic book movies. The other big one that I remember really pushing back on people for is every time like Tenet, and there was a couple other movies where, you know, Top Gun, Maverick, you know, oh, they're saving Hollywood, and I always would like tweet at people and say like, didn't like Marvel movie X that came out 6 months before make like $1 billion? Like, how are we still having to save theaters when you've had $2 billion Marvel movies since the pandemic? You know, because it just seems like, again, they want to give credit to like Christopher Nolan or Tom Cruise or whoever, but they don't want to give credit to the fact that kind of like, you know, horror movies are kind of one of those things that you always can count on to make a lot of money, especially on a lower budget. And I think Marvel, you know, they're not lower budgets, but they've been counted on. You can count on them pretty reliably to make a shitload of money, and they've kind of helped through the COVID, you know, rebound from COVID a bit, because they've come out again with a number of $1 billion franchise movies since COVID, and I think that it's keeping some coffers a little bit fuller in Hollywood. So, but of course they don't get credit for it, so it's unfortunate. But it's kind of cool to see Robert talk about that. It's cool to see him be introspective and talk about kind of almost evaluate his own work. And you know, again, it's kind of cool to see, because there has been some Marvel people recently that have even talked derisively about Marvel, even though they were Marvel people, which is a bummer to see. It kind of bums me out with that kind of shit, because it's like, you know, it's bad enough when you got all the haters out there doing it, but then when you see like, you know, so and so that wants to kind of look cool, and so he'll like make some backhanded shit about Marvel movies that made him a shitload of money and made him a star. It's kind of not Robert Downey Jr., of course. So it's kind of cool to see him going the different route and being cool about it. So let's see. Mike says he dropped out because it wasn't the way. And Mike says, I love Chaplin with Robert Downey Jr. Yeah, and it's not to say that Robert hasn't done some amazing work, because he really has. I mean, we're going to talk about the Oscars here in a bit, but, you know, he was nominated for an Oscar for Oppenheimer and stuff. I think he has a good chance of winning. You know, he did a great job there. He's done some incredible work throughout his career for sure. But I think that, you know, kind of what he's getting at though is, yeah, and I think the other part of it is because so much acting for film stars is a 2-hour movie. You know, even if you do a couple of them, like, you really are very limited. But it's like when you look at the amount of hours that, you know, he put in for Tony Stark, not to mention that the writers and creators really built him an amazing arc, where when you go look at him from the first time he appears on screen till that, you know, that last breath he takes in Infinity or Endgame, there's a massive fucking character arc there. And when you look at the amount of hours that he was able to actually put into that character, you know, I think that, you know, there's just it's kind of what I think what you're getting at is he's done some other really cool stuff, because he is a very talented actor. And I think that, you know, bringing that talent that he has gained over the years from doing some really cool shit, and then to apply it to a character like Tony Stark, I think it's really cool to see for sure. Okay, I see. Sorry, Mike, I missed your reference. He dropped out because it wasn't the way. Talking about Pedro Pascal. For some reason, when I read that, we were talking about Marvel. I know I was reading as you were throwing some chats out, so I lost track of the timing. So I was like, wait, Robert Downey Jr. I was trying to figure out like Marvel wise what, but yeah, Pedro dropped out of the horror movie because yeah, I get it. That's great. I mean, I immediately saw you were referencing Mando, but my brain didn't connect Mando with the fact that we covered Pedro Pascal a couple news things back. So that's a good one. I like that. But yeah, Pedro is awesome. And the other thing too is that as I was prepping this show, I do have to say, man, I am so happy for Pedro Pascal. Just because he is like one of the biggest stars out there right now. Because he just wasn't. I mean, I think he was like kind of one of those dudes that I think he was at least in his 40s before he really hit it big. I don't remember how old he was. I think because he did Narcos, and I know that kind of put him on the map a bit. But then I know because Narcos had a limited following. But then, of course, he was massive in Game of Thrones, and I think that's the thing that really propelled him into the fucking stratosphere. And then he's carried that on to do a lot of other things and stuff. But I was just kind of like marveling at the fact of like, the fact that he's at that spot now where, I mean, he's Last of Us, one of the best shows on TV right now. The Mandalorian's really popular. Now he's getting into Fantastic Four, but it's like when you go look at all the other stuff he's done. I mean, he did Wonder Woman, he did The Kingsman. He's done so many really cool stuff, and he did that awesome movie with Nicolas Cage, which I can never remember the title of because it's too fucking long. It's like that goddamn fucking Zac Efron movie where he plays Ted Bundy that has like a fucking 25 word title. But he's done a lot of cool stuff, but I just love it because like the dude, I mean, there's a lot of people that hit it big when they're younger. And so for a dude that was, probably pushing 40, and Mike says, yeah, he's almost 48. So yeah, I'm trying to think when he started in Game of Thrones, it's probably close to 8 or so years ago. So yeah, and then he also, Mike, thank you, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. It's a great movie, but the title is hard to keep in your mind, kind of like that damn Ted Bundy movie. But then Mike says, I hope he finishes The Last of Us 2. We have some Last of Us news to talk about a little bit later, but I do not think that is going to get dropped. I think that is going to be, I think that, it isn't just Fantastic Four, but, there's obviously some other big shit coming for him. We'll talk about some more stuff with him in the future. Not necessarily about him directly, but there's some stuff that applies to him. But then Mike said he's almost 48. Yeah, so when I calculate that out, in my mind, it feels like 8 or so years ago. I mean, if not a little bit, whenever he showed up in season 3 of Game of Thrones, was it, or season 4? I don't remember which season, but I remember that's where I discovered him. I never saw Narcos, so Game of Thrones is where I discovered him. My two of my favorite characters in this show all time is Tywin Lannister, played by the amazing Charles Dance. He's my number 1 favorite character of all time. Number 2 for me is Oberyn Martell, which is who Pedro Pascal played, and then number 3 is Littlefinger by Aidan Gillian. Those are my 3 favorite Game of Thrones characters. And Pedro Pascal, every fucking scene he was in, with every fucking actor he was in Game of Thrones, was incredible. There was like at one point, not even that long ago, a couple years ago, I found like a 40-minute video that was just like edited together all of the Oberyn Martell scenes with Pedro Pascal and all the different scenes he had with almost every character. It was almost every major scene of his. And you just watch this 40-minute video. It was just chopping through. I mean, of course, you're not following any story because you're chopping out a lot of story stuff, but it's just, what are his big scenes with Tywin Lannister? What's his big scene with Cersei? What's his big scene with, just every fucking character. It feels like every time he interacted with someone, it was just incredible scenes, and he just did such a good job. So, yeah, he's incredible. And so, yeah, the fact that he's 48 now, I mean, yeah, he's easily in his 40s by the time he's in the stratosphere of stardom. So, it's really cool to see, because I think there's a lot of people that have probably given up their dream, in show business, be it a musician or an actor or whatever else, probably by the time they hit their, 30s even, let alone into their 40s. So the fact that he persevered through, I don't know what his younger life looked like, but, either came to acting late or tried and didn't do a lot for a long time, but then finally seeing it all pop off for him here later in his life, especially in in terms of acting, is really, really cool to see. So I'm happy for him. So then the rest of the Marvel section, we've got a number of articles. Okay, never mind. We got two. There's a couple here at the beginning, a couple at the end, but all the stuff in the middle, I have no idea why. It is all about Daredevil Born Again. So there is a shitload of news on Daredevil Born Again. So let's go ahead and go through it. When I was doing the prep on this, I was like shocked. I was like, Jesus Christ, this is like Daredevil Born Again hour here. But there's a lot to talk about with Daredevil. Let me make sure I've got the next slide right. Yep, that's the right one. All right, the first one is huge because people have been waiting to hear something on this. The rumor is that Daredevil Born Again is bringing back Karen Page and Foggy Nelson, and including the actors that played those two characters in the Netflix show. Up to this point, there has been no indication that Karen or Foggy would be in the newer Daredevil stuff. They have pulled him over from the Netflix side into the MCU side. They're now, of course, we covered it last episode, they're addressing they're treating all the Netflix stuff like it's canon, but it does seem like as they've been pulling stuff in, they're not necessarily guaranteeing that everything from the Netflix stuff is carrying over. And there's a lot of people that were worried that Karen Page and Foggy Nelson, which are two fan favorite characters in the Netflix show, were not going to be carried over. And up to this point, it seemed like they were not going to be. But it seems like now the rumor is they will be. But the rumor does not include any idea of how much they might be in it. So there's a thought process that they may only be in it for a very short period of time, an episode or two maybe. And I am a little bit concerned because if I haven't read it yet, but the Daredevil Born Again comic series, I do believe the start of that whole chain in the comics is someone, maybe one of these two, Karen Page or Foggy Nelson, being brutally murdered. So I am a little bit concerned that everyone that's been freaking out the last maybe 6 months to a year, demanding that Karen Page and Foggy Nelson be brought in, may be getting monkey pawed as they may see one, maybe even both of these beloved characters brutally murdered on screen. So we'll see. I don't know. I have no indication of what might happen, but the fact that it's taken this long, and also we also know that they basically didn't pull the plug, but they completely hit pause on all this show. They're retooling a bunch of shit. They brought in some new writers. There's like, it almost feels like they got a bunch of stuff in the can, but it feels like they're going to use as much of that as they can, but they're also, it feels like they're restarting a whole fresh new thing. And I do wonder if maybe Karen and Foggy had no place in the older version, but now that they've done some retooling and reworking, that they're actually going to show up. So I don't know. We'll see, but I'm not going to hold my breath that they're going to be in every episode by any means, like they were in the Netflix show. The next up, we've got, again, more Daredevil Born Again stuff, but it is John Bernthal talking Punisher, which about 12 months ago, about a year ago, I don't remember we covered, well, no, we wouldn't have been podcasting that long ago. We started late February, so I think it would have been right before we started the podcast. I think it was about February, or late January, early February, that this news broke that John Bernthal's Punisher will be in Daredevil Born Again, so that is news that predated this show, but it is in fact happening. But we got a quote from John Bernthal talking about Punisher as well as the Daredevil Born Again show. He says, quote, "I think there's a reason why the character has resonated as deeply and as strongly as he has in the hearts and minds of comic book fans and first responders and people in the military and people all over the globe. I think there's a little bit of Frank Castle in everybody. He exists very strongly inside me, and I care about that character deeply. I also know that it's an absolutely essential part. I also know that it's absolutely essential that if we do it right, and we have a real sacred integrity to the source material, and to what is at the core of Frank. I'm going to do my absolute best to make sure that that if and when we do it right." So pretty cool to see again, kind of like the Robert Downey Jr. conversation a little bit, where you kind of, whether you see someone taking a pride in the character or their work as the character, the other thing you really like is when somebody is a fan. I guess we also talked about it with Brosnahan with Lois Lane and Superman. When you get someone that really has a protective vision of and respect for the character, I think that can never be anything but good, because I just think that when you have those people guarding the characters, you tend to see less mishandling of them maybe than might otherwise happen if no one cared. If everyone was just coming in to clock in, make a check, and clock out and go home, you'd probably see a little bit more fumbling and bumbling with some of these characters. So when you got someone like John Bernthal or Brosnahan or some of these people that really have pride in their characters and respect for what came before them, I think you see some protection of those characters. Next up, again, more Daredevil news. Rumors. This is a rumor. Daredevil Born Again won't have Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, or Luke Cage. Again, we talked last episode that the other Netflix, all the Netflix shows have been made canon in the MCU. And now we have obviously seen Daredevil carried over already, and She-Hulk, and maybe an Echo. I know it's been out around a week or so now. I don't want to go too hard into any kind of spoilers, but he's shown up a little bit, and he also showed up in Spider-Man, for God's sake, in the movies. But and especially with Foggy and Karen coming back, I think there may be some people that wonder, are Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, or all these other people, because Punisher's already back. Or not back. We haven't seen him yet, but he will be back in this show. People are wondering maybe if some of these other characters will come, but it does seem like the rumor is no, they will not be showing up, which is fine by me. I do feel like I've always told people, I love Jessica Jones. That show was incredible. Iron Fist was fucking terrible. It was really bad. Luke Cage was good too, but ultimately in the Defenders show where they all came together was okay. But ultimately to me, like, Daredevil was the absolute fucking top tier. That show was incredible across the board, and I don't feel like as good as Jessica Jones and Luke Cage got at their best. I don't think they came anywhere close to being as good as what Daredevil was doing on Netflix. So I'm not necessarily heartbroken. I would love to see at some point down the road maybe see them pop up. I do know that Young Avengers is brewing, and I do know at one version of the Young Avengers, Jessica Jones is a older, not necessarily old, but she's the more experienced superhero that kind of helps guide the Young Avengers. So I think that bringing in Kristen Ritter as that Jessica Jones, if they were to play that up, would be really cool. But I don't think that we need to rush seeing some of these characters return. Next up, let's see, make sure that's the right slide. It is. So Vincent D'Onofrio was interviewed, and he talked about this is news because this is a quote from him, so this is real. He says, Daredevil Born Again is days away from starting production back up, and this was about a week ago. So there's a chance that they're back up and running production as we speak, potentially. So D'Onofrio said this last week. He said, quote, "We're days away from restarting Daredevil, so that's that. We're about to plunge into a lot of work." He also said, quote, "We're shooting in New York, in the studio, and on location here. Brooklyn, Manhattan, Chelsea, stuff like that." So it doesn't sound like they're doing anything like filming in Los Angeles and trying to look like New York, or filming up in, I forget which Canadian city looks a lot like New York and is usually the stand-in for New York, but it does sound like they're actually filming in New York, which is kind of cool. And then he has one more quote from him. He says, quote, "The amount of episodes keeps fluctuating, so I don't really know the number that we're at right now. But it seems like there are a few shows that could work with more episodes. Then there are some that just need 8 or 10 or 6. And he says Echo is like 5, which, yeah, is true. It was 5. Although there's been some rumors that Echo may have actually allegedly been a 6-episode or even 7-episode potentially. But 6 episodes I've been hearing rumors of. And it was ended up getting chopped down to 5. So it sounds like, because originally Daredevil Born was they were talking that it was going to be a bigger one. What was the rumor back? It was almost a year ago now. But it was like it was going to be 18 episodes or something like that. It was going to be long. It was going to be as close to like old school television as we've seen in a long time. But it does sound like with what Vincent D'Onofrio is saying here, maybe that won't be the case now that they've completely retooled everything. They brought new filmmakers in. They're doing a lot of reworking, some reconstructive surgery. So God knows we might end up getting less episodes than they originally promised, which fine. As long as it's good, I don't really care. But yeah, if people are holding up expectations for that rumor or that original announcement that it'll be 18 episodes or whatever, like, you may be disappointed. And then the next one, and this is the last Daredevil show, or let's see. There we go. Yeah, I'm looking at the next slide as well. Yes, this is the last Daredevil one. Then we got 2 more small Marvel things, then we'll move on. This one is rumor that Daredevil Born Again is bringing back Bullseye from the Netflix show. So Wilson Bethel is set to reprise his role as Bullseye from the 3rd season of Netflix's Daredevil. Again, the rumor here doesn't necessarily sound like this. He may be a massive part of the show, but he is going to make an appearance, which is interesting. I also worry a tiny bit because, again, speaking of my vague understanding of the Born Again storyline in the comics, but someone very close to Matt is killed. Bullseye might be a kind of character that you might use to kill someone like Karen Page or Foggy Nelson. We'll see. But that makes me a tiny bit nervous about that thought that I had earlier about what might be coming when Bullseye is showing up, because he is a very, very effective killer. So that is it for almost said Deadpool. That's the next article, or the next thing we're covering. But that is it for Daredevil. I know that is a shitload of news. I don't know why so much news has been breaking about it. Maybe they're just trying to get a lot of talk out there on it as they're starting production back up. I have no idea, but it's been a lot to talk about. Next up, though, is Deadpool 3 has wrapped production. Ryan Reynolds sent this out on Instagram, I believe it was, and this picture is legitimately what he posted out, which is a crotch shot of Deadpool. So why he? I mean, I guess it's I guess it's just like him. Looks like we got some kind of spammer in here. Let me. Oh, there we go. I think I can. Does that work? Yeah, I think so. All right. Sorry, got like a spam bot thing. I think they're blocked now. So, yeah, I think so. All right. Sorry, that hasn't happened to us much, but yeah. So Ryan Reynolds sent this out on social media, and it is very much like him to send out a crotch picture of Daredevil. But he said on the post, he said, the suit hides the blood, also sweat. But today, with Deadpool rapping, it's mostly tears. A giant and forever thanks to the cast and crew of our film who battled wind, rain, strikes, and then he puts but I'm just going to read it like the name, who has battled wind, rain, strikes, and Hugh Jackman. All under the stalwart leadership of Sean Levy. I got to make a movie with my closest pals, and that doesn't happen very often. See you July 26th. So Deadpool is wrapped, and I do believe this is like wrapped full on production, not wrapped shooting. Since it's coming out in July, I would assume that shooting is probably wrapped before now. But I'm sure there's still a little bit of work to do. Maybe it is filming. That just seems like we're cutting it pretty close. I guess not. That's still 5 months away. So no, that's probably, maybe they're just wrapping filming and whatever reshoots or whatever they may have to have done. So either way, really cool, exciting to see. Of course, the news, not Ryan Reynolds' crotch in the costume, but kind of cool to see. Very excited. That is the only Marvel movie coming out this year for the MCU. I know Sony has some of their bastardized Marvel stuff coming out, but true Marvel MCU, there's just one thing coming out in theaters this year. Of course, there's some streaming stuff coming out, but it is the only thing we're getting is Daredevil. So next up is let me see here. I've got to fix the pictures here because for the next slide. Okay, so the next slide is the last Marvel thing to cover, and it is X-Men 97 has released their character designs. Now these aren't necessarily earth-shattering because we already knew they're bringing back the original voice cast of the original 90s X-Men cartoon. So I think a lot of us assumed the characters are pretty much going to look alike, but there are some changes to these characters. So let me see. I have to like change the screen to change the picture. So the first one here, we got Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Storm. Storm has some different hair, but other than that, they look just like they did when I was a little kid in the 90s. Next up, we've got oh, no, it does change. Okay. I didn't realize it was going to change on the screen. Some of the, like when I'm doing the slides, I guess maybe it's because I'm doing it the way I built the slides. But when I do like my tier lists, I've got to like change it in the preview and then change the screen. I can't like change it real time on the screen. Whatever. It doesn't matter for you guys. It's only important to me. It's probably boring to you guys. But yeah, this is Jubilee. I'm not sure who else we got here. I believe the one on the right might be Morph, but Morph died, so I don't know if that's him. Definitely people I'm not familiar with, but we've got a couple other characters. And the last one, of course, is Wolverine, Beast, and not the last one. I'm sorry. We still have one more after this. Wolverine, Beast, and Gambit pretty much looks as they did in the 90s. It does look a little bit sharper. The designs are the same, but I do think there's a little bit, there's more sharpness. This is the 4K era. Even in animation, you see a little bit nicer things than was back in the 90s on our CRT TVs with fuzz and bad antennas and whatnot. And then the last one is indeed Rogue, Bishop, and Magneto. Of course, my favorite character of all time, Magneto, comic book character of all time. This one excites me, of course, to see Magneto, but Rogue and Bishop and Magneto all look the same as they did in the 90s. So really cool. I'm really excited to see these. Like I said, in my mind, as I pictured X-Men 97, this is what I pictured as these same characters that we had back in the 90s. So it is really cool to actually see them on screen, though, and know, yes, indeed, what we saw back in the day is what we're going to be getting here later in the year. So that's really exciting. Let's see what we got next is moving out of the Marvel realm here. We've got Star Trek news. There's a new Star Trek movie being developed, and it is set to be directed by Andor director Toby Haynes. They have been having a hell of a time with Star Trek since the last movie. Of course, the untimely passing of Anton Yelkin, one of the bridge crew, which is unfortunate, and I think that may have really killed any possibility of a full-on fourth movie of the Chris Pine Star Trek movies. And then there was the short time where fucking Tarantino sounded like he wanted to do one. I love Tarantino for what he is. I am kind of glad that we're never going to see a Tarantino Star Trek movie, though, because that just... I don't know. Tarantino's Tarantino. It's kind of one of those keep your Tarantino out of my Star Trek and keep my Star Trek out of Tarantino type thing. It just doesn't feel like those two things really fit together well. So I'm glad that one didn't work out. And I feel like there was one other one that was in development at some point in the last little bit. I don't know, though. This is the next one that's coming down the pike, though. It is being let's see. So Toby Haynes directed some episodes of Andor. It is being written by Seth Grahame-Smith, which he wrote Lego Batman, Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, and Abraham Lincoln, the Vampire Hunter. So he's writing the script. It is being called, quote, an origin story that takes place decades before the 2009 reboot. Sorry, allergies are getting me. So I'm a little bit I was like somewhat excited until I read that. I am so goddamn sick of Star Trek going backwards. Star Trek has always, up to probably the turn of the century into the 2000s, had always been about forward progress. It always moved forward. It was the original, then the Next Generation, then Deep Space Nine, then Voyager. Like, it just kept moving forward. I guess then Enterprise is kind of where it started to go off the rails. And it just feels to me like I'm so fucking tired of seeing Kirk era shit. And I know that's the classic, but I'm an next-gen kid. And not just that, but I love Deep Space Nine. I love Voyager. Show me the future, for fuck's sake, man. let me see what happens after the Dominion War. So honestly, I'm pretty much writing this one off. I'm not really interested in this. I took whatever. I was fine watching those 2009 reboots. They were fun for what they were. Just going back and playing with your action figures of Kirk and Spock and McCoy, and there were some good performances in there as well. But ultimately, another Star Trek thing that's going backwards in time is just it's not for me. Mike says they need to jump 100 years into the future for Trek. Amen. I mean, like I said, even give me something after the Dominion Wars in Deep Space Nine. That was the last really massive event that we saw. Of course, I know, what is it? Not Challenger. That's the freaking space shuttle. Discovery. I know that one was early, Kirk era ish. But then I do know in the third or fourth season, the finale was they got shot thousands of years into the future. And I don't know how that panned out. I just remember a friend of mine that was a little bit more into Trek that was able to watch that show and get through it, because I kind of stalled out on that show. That he told me that they actually jumped ahead, but that was then I stopped working with him, so I haven't really heard much from him since. So I don't know if they actually continued the rest of that show 3,000 years in the future, which that would have been somewhat interesting. But to spend 3 seasons in the Kirk era again, I couldn't get into that. So yeah, I'm with you, Mike. I just want to see move forward. Sci-fi is about progression. We shouldn't just be dwelling in the past for sci-fi. I know it's still the future for us, but it's the past in Star Trek. We know so much about the future. I just feel like you limit yourself so much. You can't discover new aliens. You can't see new technologies discovered by the Federation. There's all this stuff you can't do because the Borg are amazing, right? But it's you could, although Enterprise fucking ruined that, and they showed the Borg and tried to fucking hand wave away the fact the Borg showed up in that, and that means that Picard's first contact with the Borg wasn't the first contact for humans. Whatever. I never watched Enterprise either. When that theme song started and it was a fucking song with lyrics, I was out. I was never the biggest Scott Bakula fan either. But I will say though, sorry, I will say though, I was not into Deep Space Nine and Voyager for the longest time either. So maybe at some point I'll have to give Enterprise another try. But yeah, I'm just all about give me the exploration, give me the joy of discovery, new species, new technologies, new planets. You just can't do that when you're a prequel to the 2009 reboot, which was Kirk stuff. Because like if you're an origin story decades before that, you're talking about the realm of like you're still I guess you could discover, but I feel like then you're just discovering stuff that we've already seen. It's like, oh my god, the fucking Cardassians or whatever. I'm not enough Star Trek fan to know like the timelines of all that, but I feel like you're only going to discover stuff that turns into like weird like fan service stuff where it's just like, oh my god, the first time we saw the Klingons and stuff like it just I don't know. That's just me. If you love that, if you love going back and just dwelling in that certain era, all the power to you, man. It's just not for me. Not my thing. Let's see. And then Mike said, I loved Deep Space Nine. Surprisingly interesting for a space station that doesn't go anywhere. Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I hated on it at first. I remember when that show was new, and I was just like, what? Like, why the fuck would I care about a space station? And then, like, as I think then when they brought Worf over after Next Gen ended, I think that tempted me to go, but I still never went into that show. And it wasn't until I was old, I was like an adult, I was, past high school and stuff. And it's actually interesting because I actually think Deep Space Nine has some of the most fascinating elements of like social commentary and stuff. Like you've got things like genocides with the Bajorans, and there's like a lot of like really fucking heavy topics that weigh on late 20th, early 21st century. I just saw an article not too long ago about there's an episode of Deep Space Nine where they get sent back to 2024, and they talk about the sparks that basically will end up causing World War III, that is the end of the world as we know it, that moves into like the ashes of World War III is where like Zephyr and Cochrane, all that kind of fun stuff. But basically they were talking about how 2024 was this crux year, and it was actually like this is back in like the early 2000s or late 90s, but Cisco's telling whoever is there with him that it's basically, it turns into like one of the biggest things was homelessness, and it turns into a thing where society starts to basically put homeless people in camps and isolating them and imprisoning them, and it turns into this whole uprising. And so it's really interesting because there's just certain areas where it's like, how did they write that 20 years ago? That feels very prescient for real 2024 in some ways. I'm not trying to get political, but it's just you can't talk Trek without being somewhat political, because sci-fi is usually one of the strongest places for looking at current events and stuff. Yeah, I love Deep Space Nine. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. I need to rewatch it. It's been probably 5 to 8 years since I watched that for the first time. But that whole Dominion War was incredible. It's like the first time ever that Star Trek did like 4 or 5 part episodes. You saw some massive space battles and stuff. I do find it ironic though that they created the Defiant for the Borg, and then throughout the entire run of Deep Space Nine, it never once encounters the Borg. It doesn't encounter the Borg until First Contact in the movie, when the Defiant shows up with Worf in command fighting the Borg. That's the first time, even though the ship was like custom made to fight the Borg. Then they ended up pretty much never dealing with the Borg much in Deep Space Nine. So love it. I know that's a bit of a tangent, but yeah, I love Star Trek, man. It's fun stuff, and yeah, Deep Space Nine is good stuff. So next up, and this one is not necessarily Star Trek related, but kind of, because it is Jonathan Frakes, legend. Jonathan Frakes, Star Trek legend, is directing a series called Deathlands. This is going to have a 10-part. This is going to be a 10-part series directed by Frakes. It's based on a 1986 novel. The story is set in, quote, a post-apocalyptic world 100 years after a nuclear exchange between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, in which a mutated, crazed civilization is beginning to reemerge. It follows Ryan Cawthor and a band of survivors who travel the Deathlands using a teleportation technology that they have uncovered. So I just want to say, let me get over here and... give a round of applause because Jonathan Frakes deserves it. The dude's a fucking legend. Not only on screen but behind the camera. Jonathan has done some amazing things directing. I mean, First Contact, for instance, one of the more well-regarded Star Trek movies. He's done a lot. But not only even the stuff that he's done, but he's even directed in the new era. I think he did some stuff with for Discovery. I think he did some stuff for Lower Decks, the cartoon. He's just been so plugged in, and he does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I think he's just a very effective director. There was a recapping in the last couple of years of one of the lesser next gen movies, and one of the cast members talked about how the director they brought on from the studio was just kind of a know nothing. They just didn't really get it, and I think it was maybe Brett Spiner, and he's like, honestly, if they would have just hired Jonathan to be the director, that movie would be 100 times better than what it ended up being. But the director just didn't understand the characters. He wasn't interested in anything we had to say input wise. So it's like it was kind of a train wreck of a movie, and it sounds like a large part of that was someone not knowing what they needed to know. And all the while, Jonathan Frakes was standing there that he could have easily stepped in and probably directed an incredible fucking movie. So next up, this is, make sure I've got the right slide. And it is The Last of Us Season 2. Mike mentioned this earlier. He hopes that nothing goes wrong with this, with Pedro Pascal becoming all the rage. I don't think it'll happen. In fact, Season 2 is about to begin filming. The casting is being rounded out here. I have not played much. I think I played like a quarter of the first game. I need to dive back into it. But what I did is because they did the original game, then they did a remastered for PS4, something like that, PS3 maybe. So I ended up buying that game, and then I got a chunk into it, maybe a quarter of the way into the game, and then I saw an announcement that they were about to do a full-on 4K PS5 level remaster of the first game. So I just stopped playing because I'm like, I'll just wait for that one because I want like the best fucking everything. But I have watched the first season, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I haven't played the second game. I haven't played a lot of the first game, probably 3/4 of the first game I haven't played. So I don't know a lot about these characters. But 3 roles that apparently are somewhat big have been cast for Season 2 of Last of Us. The first one is Caitlin Dever, who has been cast as Abby. So on most of these, I've got a quote about the character, and then there's a quote from Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann, basically the 2 creative minds behind the show. And Druckmann was the guy behind the game. So about Abby, it says, quote, "A skilled soldier whose black and white views of the world is challenged as she seeks vengeance for those that she loved." So that sounds really interesting. And Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann said, quote, "Our casting process for Season 2 has been identical to Season 1. We look for world-class actors who embody the soul of the characters in the source material. Nothing matters more than talent, and we're thrilled to have an acclaimed performer like Caitlin to join Pedro, Bella, and the rest of our family." So that is the first one. I'm very excited. I do know, just in the general ethos of the world, I've seen enough discussion. I do believe Abby's a big part of the second game, so I kind of anticipate Abby being a big part of the next season. I have no clue who she is or what her dynamic is, but I feel like I've heard the name Abby quite a bit. So I just, again, in the ether, I couldn't tell you one thing about her. I mean, except for what I just read there that this article told me. But I don't know, like, if she's a massive character. I don't know, like, her dynamic. I don't know if she's a new love interest for Ellie. I don't know. We'll see, though. Let's see. And then second is Young Mazzino is the guy's name, is the kid's name. He is cast as the role of Jesse. And it says, quote, and I said kid, but young adult. I don't want to sound like an old person. And also in this context, like, saying kid could literally mean, like, you might think he's a 12-year-old or something. That's not the case. This young actor, it says, quote, "A pillar of his community who puts everyone else's needs before his own, sometimes at terrible cost." And again, his character name is Jesse. Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann said of the casting, "Young is one of those rare actors who is immediately undeniable the moment you see him. We're so lucky to have him, and we can't wait for audiences to see Young shine in our show." And then we've got the third and final one that's been announced right as of now. Isabel Merced has been cast as Dina. And Dina is described, quote, "A freewheeling spirit whose devotion to Ellie will be tested by the brutality of the world they inhabit." Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann said of the character and casting, so this one's kind of weird because they're also talking about the character and the casting at the same time. "A warm, brilliant, wild, funny, moral, dangerous, and instantly lovable. You can search forever for an actor who effortlessly embodies all of those things, or you can find Isabel Merced right away. We couldn't be prouder to have her joining our family. So you always kind of see the way this works out is when you start to see the castings being rounded out is right about before they start filming. So I do believe that filming is going to begin very soon. I do believe that, this is probably a high priority for Pedro Pascal. And I'm sure when he was negotiating his deal for Fantastic Four, he was probably put in the contract that, we're not going to upset the filming of The Last of Us, because that's been a massive show and huge hit for everyone involved. All right, so next up, we're getting into the horror movie realm now. And I know Last of Us is kind of horror-ish, so this kind of like vibes right into it, I believe. And it is almost The Last of Us. That's what I was just talking about. 28 Years Later movie is in the works. So this is a sequel. We originally had 28 Days Later, then we had 28 Weeks Later, and now a number of years later. I feel like it's been almost 15 years since the last movie. I feel like both those movies came out in the early 2000s, like the mid 2000s. I believe they both came out around that time. So it feels like it's been a long wait since this movie. I had given up hope that we'd ever get this. In fact, Cillian Murphy was the star of the first movie. I will admit I've only seen the first movie. I still need to watch the second one, but I'm pretty excited to hear because I really love the first one. Mike says, yes, I love 28 Days Later. So Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are both returning to the series. That is the director and writer. And then the other note I have here, this would be the third film in the series. But it does mention that the hopes are that this is going to actually launch a trilogy of films. So not only is this going to be the third movie, so I guess you'd round out the trilogy of the 28 movies, but this is supposed to be sparking, hopefully, they're hoping this will spark a whole new trilogy. So it's going to be, what would that be, 5 movies total? This trilogy and then the duology, the original duology, Days and Weeks, and then you'll have Years and then whatever to follow it. Also, I've heard that studios are bidding right now to try to land this project, and it is a very sought after project for all studios. But the reports are that Warner Brothers is currently the leader in the clubhouse to win the bidding to land this project. Again, as I mentioned earlier, everyone shits on horror, but then studios know that horror can generally be made cheap and it always makes money. So Hollywood loves horror because it is profitable as fuck. So I'm sure one like this that has a built-in audience is probably going to be a very desirable film for a lot of studios. So next up, we've got David Gordon Green is no longer directing The Exorcist Deceiver, which was going to be they were going to do a trilogy of these Exorcist movies. There was the original, or the first one that came out this last 2023, The Exorcist Deceiver, and then there was, I think they had a title for the third one too, but I don't remember it. But Dennis Gordon Green has stepped out of that role. The first film obviously did not do well financially, but honestly, it doesn't really seem that that's the issue. To me, it seems like David Gordon Green has not really seemed committed to coming back for the sequels anyway. Just some of the quotes, even before there was a lot of box office returns, so it wasn't like the quotes I remember reading weren't in light of like a bad box office return. But it just felt like he's like, I'd be happy if I ended up directing this. But there's just, I can't remember the full quote, but there was just the vibe I got that he just didn't feel like he was like all that into it. And then this article actually goes on and mentioned there's actually a rumor out there that he is actually tired of doing horror movies. Obviously, he came from more of a comedic background, but with the Halloween trilogy, I believe he did one other thing, and then the Exorcist movies, I think he's maybe just getting sick of being outside of the genre he's a little bit more happy in, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. It does sound like, though, the movie is going to continue forward. They do want to continue making it. They obviously put a huge investment to buy the Exorcist rights. It does seem like it'll probably move forward with another director. So we'll see what happens there. And then in terms of dead, nothing more dead seemingly than Scream 7. But Neve Campbell was recently talked to on a couple different occasions, and it kind of gave us some interesting context for Scream 7. So Neve was asked if fan service was enough to bring her back to the franchise, and she says, quote, "It's a hard question because it's a matter of principle as well. As much as I love the character that I've played and the ones that I've had history with, it's also very important to me that it's very important to me the concept of equal pay. I think that we're still not there yet. I really do believe that that had I been a male, that offer would have been different. I can't prove that, but it's my feeling. The feeling I have, and the way that I was treated was not great, and it feels disrespectful. So at what point does self-respect come into play? It needs to always be there, right? And I'll pause and say absolutely. Nev, like, fuck anyone that lowballed her. She is Scream. And despite the fact they've made a movie without her now, she still is fucking Scream. I mean, they made a lot of Halloween movies over the years without Jamie Lee Curtis, but Jamie Lee Curtis is fucking Halloween too. That is Halloween as Jamie Lee Curtis, and Nev will always be that way for Scream. So I still fume when I think about the fact that they fucking lowballed her, man. I just can't see it. I mean, I think back in the day when the news first broke, I think she was the example. She's like, do you think that Bruce Willis ever got lowballed with the Die Hard movies? And it's like, legit, that is the perfect explanation. She is fucking, Bruce Willis for Die Hard. She is that to Scream, if not more. Yeah, it's infuriating that they would ever lowball her. And Mike in the chat says Spyglass morons. Oh, absolutely. I almost cheer for this movie not to happen until Spyglass is out of the picture. But I do wonder if they're gonna back a fucking Brinks truck up to Nev Campbell's house now that they've fired and alienated pretty much the entire young cast and the director. They're pretty much at ground zero. They have nothing left of Scream 7. So I kind of wonder if to save the possibility of them being able to do a movie and probably make a lot of money because Screams have always done well, I wonder if Spyglass is going to basically just get a fucking dump truck of money and roll up to Nev's house just to try to pull this out of the jaws of defeat. But we'll see. Another quote, she says, quote, "It's sad to me that they're struggling at the moment." Talking about the new movie and Spyglass and Scream 7. She says, "It's sad to me that they're struggling at the moment. I would imagine that people at the top are spinning a little bit, trying to make the right decision. I think I would imagine people want to do the right thing. I would hope. I love this franchise. I love it for Wes, and in parentheses, Craven. I love it for all the people who have been involved, even the newer cast. I would hope it doesn't fall apart." And then asked if she would come back. She says, "Given the right circumstances, yes. I made a statement several years ago, and it was the reason that I didn't do the film at the time. And I just really felt that I needed to stand up and say, I don't believe I would have been treated this way had I been a man carrying a franchise for 25 years. And that still stands. So if they were to choose to come back to me, that would continue to be my takeaway. We'll see." So it does sound like it's good to see that she's actually still open to the idea. It does sound like she's going to hold her ground on the money, which good. And there's nothing I like more than seeing someone stand up for what they are worth, in any context, whether that's I know people see it with sports but it could even just be a person that works with you. If there's someone that's worth a certain amount and a company should pay that, like if that's the person's worth. And yeah, she is truly the person that's carried the franchise for 25 years. So she should be like, to me, it's like the old days with Halloween too. The original Halloween movies is like Jamie Lee Curtis stepped out for a while, so it was Donald Pleasance that carried those movies. And it just felt to me like when you were putting the budget together for a Halloween movie, I would imagine that the very first thing you would secure is, here's the money we're going to pay Donald Pleasance, and then here's the money for the rest of the movie. It just feels like that's probably was your biggest priority. And it just seems to me that it should be the same way for Scream, and Nev Campbell should have always been the highest priority. And even if that meant you had to spend 20% of your budget on her salary, if that's what she was worth, that's what she's worth. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the last movie, in spite of myself, because I did go in kind of wanting to hate it because Nev wasn't in there. But they did still do a good job despite all of it. But I do still think it is her franchise. And now with everything the way that it's happened, the only way it's moving forward, I believe, is with her. For me, I know for a fact, even if they created a Scream 7, they built everything back up from the ground up, even if it was a whole new cast, I would probably pass and just give up and write the series off. But if they were to bring Nev back, I would be there because it is ultimately her franchise. Next up, this is an interesting one. Top Gun 3 is in development, with Tom Cruise attached to star and Joseph Kosinski set to direct, as well as the young cast is reportedly going to be back. This is that part is rumor that the young cast will also be involved. Miles Teller, is that his name? Yeah, Miles Teller. The people that were younger in the new movie. I'm mixed on this one. I really fucking loved Maverick. I actually think Maverick's better than the original Die Hard, Top Gun. But I will say I'm nervous because it feels like they really took their time and waited and then took their fucking shot with Maverick and just absolutely blew the fucking sky out with an incredible movie. I'm concerned that they made a lot of money with it now and they're just going to make a sequel really fast, and I just hope they don't fuck it up, because there's part of me that just wonders why not just leave it alone. You got a great all-time classic. People loved Top Gun, and then now you have Top Gun 2 that comes out decades later and people fucking adore it. It's like the ultimate dad movie. It just seems to me like a weird choice to immediately jump back and make another one unless they really do well. It's kind of like the old, like I've said multiple times with Toy Story. After Toy Story 3 had such a perfect ending, Toy Story 4 had the ultimate weight on it of you have to justify undoing that ending of 3 to justify your own existence. And I don't think Toy Story 4 did. And I think there's certain movies that are that way. If you've got such a perfect ending, you really have to justify not leaving that the ending. And I think I wouldn't say that it's like the ultimate definitive ending with Top Gun Maverick, but I would say that after so long of not making any sequels, like it's not like Rambo or some of these other action movies that came out in that era that, you know, spawned a million fucking sequels. Like, no, Top Gun was always just Top Gun until a couple years ago when, you know, Maverick came out, and it's nowhere near the same quality of movie, but I feel like it's kind of like Mad Max Fury Road, where it's like a lot of people had kind of forgotten about Mad Max, and suddenly a movie came out and it was just so fucking good that people, you know, they're all over themselves. And I just kind of wonder if it's the right move to continue making Top Gun movies. We'll see. I hopefully it's good though. I really do hope it's good. And then next up, coming out of fucking left field, the last thing in the world I ever thought I would read. They are making a prequel to the Book of Eli, the 2010 Denzel Washington movie. One of the first movies after the Harry Potter and Dark Knight trilogy era. Gary Oldman, one of the first times that he returned back as a villain, which was an absolute fucking wonder because Gary Oldman, nobody plays anything better than Gary Oldman ever, but nobody plays a villain better than Gary Oldman for sure. So Book of Eli was really awesome. It is actually still one of my all-time favorite film scores of the new century. The Book of Eli score is still one I'll throw on occasion. It's so fucking good. And the movie's incredible too. And this is actually going to be starring John Boyega, as he's going to be playing the role of Eli. In the original movie, it was 30 years after a nuclear holocaust. This film is said to be set 30 years prior, so this could very well be the actual nuclear apocalypse or the immediate fallout of it. So very interesting, the timelines there. Highly recommend Book of Eli, though. Very excited to see another Book of Eli. Oh, and I'm sorry, this is also a series. If I said movie by accident. When I was writing up the notes for this, I accidentally kept typing movie instead of series, but it is a series. So they're doing a prequel series, and it is starring John Boyega playing the titular role. So really cool. I loved it. Loved that movie a lot. It did a wonderful job for post-apocalyptic stuff. It came out in 2010, so that predated Mad Max Fury Road by 2017. But I remember when I saw it back in 2010, the thing that really blew me away is, because I've said it multiple times on the Dark Tower show, is for me, the post-apocalypse for me is always going to be Mad Max. That's what I always picture. And whenever I read the Dark Tower series, that is what I pictured in my head was fucking Mad Max. Like every time we were talking about desert and stuff, Mad Max scenery is what came to my mind. And I remember when Book of Eli came out, I didn't have high expectations for it. I was just like, oh, whatever. It's just probably a mid action movie, but Gary Oldman was in it, so I went and saw it, and it fucking blew me away. So I'm excited to see what we might get from this, to get some more backstory. Especially, it intrigues me the fact that we might potentially actually see the Holocaust, the nuclear Holocaust. That could be very interesting, because I don't know. Just the fact that the years are lining up like that. Like I said, if we're not going to see it, we're going to be in the immediate aftermath. Like, you know, stuff might still be pretty radioactive, pretty close. I mean, not that radiation falls off that quickly, but it just feels like maybe not, the mushroom clouds won't still be in the sky, but it'll be very, very close to the events, which is interesting. And yeah, I just didn't expect it. I mean, 2010, it felt like that was pretty much an open and shut movie. I just didn't expect to see another continuation of it, especially this long after that. You know, like if a sequel had come out a couple years later, that'd be one thing, but to see a series coming I mean, it's in development now, so it may not come out till 2025, and that's what, 15 years later. That's a long time. Mike says, we know he's blind now. Yeah, it's that's true. But I don't know. I still think they can tell some interest. I love post-apocalyptic stuff. I'm a sucker for that shit, man. So I mean, sign me up. And if they can get I can't believe I'm fucking blanking. Bear McCreary stuck in my head. And I know it wasn't Bear McCreary. Book of Eli. It should be on my fucking list because I listen to it so much. Atticus Ross. Atticus Ross they should definitely make sure to sign him up to do the score because he fucking killed it in the first one. Like I said, I still listen to it pretty regularly for a movie, for a soundtrack from a movie 14 years ago. That's not like a lifetime classic like Indiana Jones or Star Wars I grew up on. Like there's not many movies from the 2010 era that I still listen to the soundtracks for. That one and Inception might be about it. So Mike says, now in my head canon, the Fallout series and the Book of Eli take place in the same universe. Yes, exactly. I love that shit. Maybe, and I know I'm probably indicting myself even more the fact that I have not played the Fallout games, being such a massive fan of post-apocalyptic stuff. But yeah, it just I sign me up, and I love John Boyega too. I'd love to see what else he might come out with here in the future. So that intrigues me too. I think that I may be a little bit more middle of the road on it, but I think John Boyega kind of sells me on, puts it over the line for me to where I'm like, yeah, I'm there. I'll be there. Next up, we've got some highlights for the Oscars. So the Oscar nominations, I mean. So I'm not going to go through everything, but I just wanted to hit some stuff that really jumps out to me. I have not seen a ton of the Oscar movies, but I've seen some. But I wanted to hit some highlights. The Best Picture, the three that I really know. My general goal every year in the last 8 years maybe, my goal is always to try to see every Best Picture film, if not maybe delve into like Best Director. I try to hit some of the Oscar movies after they get announced what I haven't seen. So there's still a lot I haven't seen, but the ones I've seen that I'm interested, Barbie, Killer of the Flower Moon, and Oppenheimer, the three Best Picture wise I've got circled. But I've went through and read all the other ones. The other thing is, right about a couple years after I started to I want to watch every Best Picture movie before the Oscars, and I have yet to accomplish it. I keep getting close, but I never have finished it. But then not long after that is when they fucking expanded the goddamn nominations out, like doubled the size of the list, and I was like, God damn it. It's just, they don't want to make it easy on me. So Best Picture wise, Greta Gerwig unfortunately got snubbed for Best Director. I know there's been a lot of talk about Margot Robbie for lead actress. I don't know on that one as much. I mean, she did a great job for sure. But the movie was good. I really enjoyed Barbie. I watched it on HBO Max not too long ago. Greta Gerwig I've been a fan of since Lady Bird. So I've kind of cheered for her. I'm really disappointed she didn't get nominated as Best Director. So maybe the outside dark horse if Barbie were to win Best Picture, which I don't think is likely, but if it did, it might be a little bit of a boost for her for getting kind of snubbed. But Killer of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer are two of my favorite movies of the year. I would probably be cheering for Oppenheimer though. That was probably my favorite movie of the year. Best Director, the two that I've got circled, Martin Scorsese and Christopher Nolan, for the aforementioned Killer of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer. Lead actor for me, it begins and ends with Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer. I think 100% he deserves it. I want to see him win that one. Supporting actor, Robert De Niro for Killer of the Flower Moon, Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer, and Ryan Gosling for Barbie. I kind of said earlier, I think Robert Downey Jr. has a really good chance to win supporting actor. In fact, that's probably who I'd cheer for. It's really hard not to cheer for Robert De Niro. Absolute fucking legend. He did a great job in Killer of the Flower Moon too. But Robert Downey Jr. I think he's a good actor. It's been established, but I do think that after playing 15 years of playing Tony Stark and doing a great job of it, to play someone so fucking different, I think might help him secure a win here, just because people are so used to him being the Iron Man, and then he's done a few other things like Doolittle and a few other things that didn't work out great, but then to see him step into this dramatic role and something that's so different from who he is, that it made me laugh was watching all the press things where they'd have GQ or whoever, and they sit in the little white room and they do YouTube videos and shit. They kept doing those where they'd have Nolan and Downey Jr. together, and it was just hilarious to me because Nolan's just this quiet dude that he's not the most vociferous person. But then Robert Downey Jr. is just fucking on the entire time, and it just made me laugh because like I kind of knew I knew the history, so I knew who he was playing, and it just it just made me laugh because it's like he is so fucking different just as a human being than who he's playing in this. Like Louis Strauss, like Louis Strauss is just this like totally just a different kind of guy. So Robert being so different in the press release stuff just made me laugh a lot. So I really think he might be my favorite lead actress. It is one for me. It's Lily Gladstone for Killer of the Flower Moon. She absolutely fucking killed it. I mean, she's playing against some heavyweights too. You know, she's playing with Robert De Niro. She's playing with Leonardo DiCaprio. It could be easy to get lost when you're dealing with like heavyweight actors like that, and you're being directed by, one of the greatest directors alive. Yeah, but she just absolutely fucking killed that movie. Like she was so good. And I know that there's a lot of people that are celebrating the fact that she's the first Indigenous actor ever nominated for a major acting award like this. So it'd be kind of cool in that sense as well. But I think that she absolutely deserves it. Again, I know I haven't seen everything, so I can't say for sure, but I'm cheering for her. Supporting actress, Emily Blunt from Oppenheimer. That's the main one I saw there. I'm looking at writing for adapted material, Barbie and Oppenheimer. Those are the two I kind of know from that realm. I would think that either of those would be the ones I would cheer for. Cinematography, Killer of the Flower Moon or Oppenheimer. I know I'm mostly being repetitious here, but one of those two for me is probably going to be who I would cheer for. Original score, John Williams added again with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. But then you also have Killer of the Flower Moon, which was not bad. But then Oppenheimer, I've listened to Oppenheimer's score like a million times since it came out. I think it's one of my favorite things. Johann Goring, I think is his name. He did maybe I said his name wrong, but yeah, he did the Mandalorian. He did that. That's kind of where he put himself on the map. But then Hans Zimmer is the general guy that you go to when you're Christopher Nolan, but he has betrayed Christopher Nolan, and I'm saying that jokingly, because he is a massive lifelong fan of Dune. So at the time that Oppenheimer went into production, he had already committed to scoring the Dune movie, and as a massive fan, he was never going to step away from that. So it left Christopher Nolan to have to find a new composer, and he did. He found one, and I think the dude fucking killed it. Oppenheimer is gone into my regular rotation of scores I listen to a lot, and a lot of those, if they're not John Williams or Hans Zimmer, things like Interstellar. There's some great scores out there. I just mentioned it a little bit ago. Inception, I still listen to from 2010. But yeah, he did a great job with Oppenheimer. It's an incredible score. And then visual effects, I wanted to mention Godzilla -1 got nominated. This is historic because this is the first time in 60. Is it 60 years? No, 70 years, isn't it? Let's see. Yeah, 70 years. God, had to check my math. 70 years that Godzilla has existed. 1954, I think, was the first movie. It has never been nominated for an Oscar of any kind. No Godzilla movie of any kind, any time, at any stage. This is the first time ever a Godzilla movie has been nominated. It was one of my favorite movies of last year as well. I loved Godzilla -1. I actually was my first movie I saw this year in theaters. I decided to start the year off right by going and doing a rewatch of Godzilla -1. It's doing gangbusters at the box office, and it did it on the realm of like a $10 million budget too. So it's incredible that a monster movie with special effects and stuff, the fact that they made that movie for $10 million is beyond comprehension. Like, even if this is a movie in 1995, I think a $10 million budget would not feel right for a movie that looked like as good as Godzilla did. So that's a really cool one that I'll be cheering for. But next up, we got a couple news articles that kind of fall out of the Oscar nominations. Martin Scorsese is now the most nominated living director of all time. I just mentioned earlier, he's one of the greatest living directors. And now, if you wanted to say prove it, well, previously he was tied with Steven Spielberg with living directors. Both of those guys had 9 nominations, but with this newest nomination, Martin Scorsese moves up to 10, and there is no living director that has that many. So Martin has rightfully moved his way up to potentially being considered one of the greatest film directors of our time, if not certainly of people that are still alive right now directing. Nobody's seems to be doing it better than him, and for decades and decades and decades. Next up, John Williams breaking some records. So he actually broke 2 records with this nomination with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. He is now the most nominated person alive. He has been nominated 54 times. The only human being ever to exist that has more nominations than him is a man named Walt Disney. You may have heard of him. Walt Disney has 59 nominations. John Williams, if he continues kicking it and gets 6 more nominations, he would beat Walt Disney. That is, of course, going to be tough with him pushing 91. Or he is 91 now, I mean. So we'll see, but I'll be cheering for John to beat Walt Disney. He is, of course, the greatest film composer of all time, in my opinion. He is also now the oldest person to ever be nominated, being nominated at the age of 91. Both of those records he now owns. I guess I shouldn't say he now owns, because he owned them previously. In both cases, the person that he beat for the records this year was him previously. So the most nominated living used to be him, but he just beat his own record. And the oldest person nominated used to be him, but he now beat his record. So John Williams, living legend. So now we got one last chunk to go through, but there's a lot to go through, which I'm looking at the time. I'm kind of glad that I'm glad I didn't still try to talk about the Coen Brothers, because yeah, we got a lot to talk about, and it's all Star Wars. If you've noticed the lack of Star Wars news, because I bunched them all together, and I wanted to leave these ones for the end. I will probably go long, so don't worry that I'm like, oh my God, he's running out of time. Don't worry, we got a lot to talk about. The big one, and I actually fucked up this one, and I put the cart before the horse. Last episode, I dropped the visual, the thing for Ahsoka season 2, and only in the middle of recording that, and I think Mike was here. Well, wait, was that after no, that was actually after. No, we covered the news and then the tier list. So I did the news while Mike was still in the chat. So Mike saw it. There was a moment where I stopped and went, wait a minute, did I cover? And in my head, I was like, fuck, I think I forgot to cover the massive news. But basically, we covered the drawing that most likely Dave Filoni did. That's got the finger. Actually, let's see. I think I still have it on my in my little toolbar here. Yeah, let's go ahead and I'll change it over. So don't ignore the headline for a second, but this image that I have on the screen right now, this is the one that I showed last time, and I talked about Ahsoka season 2 that had been confirmed. But that was I had put the cart before the horse, because we had not actually talked about it yet, because I forgot this massive fucking announcement to cover last time. And it is The Mandalorian and Grogu is the title of a upcoming Star Wars film. That is right. That is called The Mandalorian and Grogu. It has been announced. Mike, you cut out during the tier ranking, and I was just getting it jumbled in my head here because we did the tier ranking first, but usually tier rankings are after news, so we covered all the news. But yes, so I ended up covering this Ahsoka picture without actually having talked about the fact that Ahsoka season 2 is finally confirmed, and that was actually buried in this press release. So let's cover this one, and we'll get to it. But so Mandalorian Grogu film is announced. So Lucasfilm had a bombshell press release on January 9th, and it was loaded with fucking information. There's a shitload here. The big news is they're making a Mandalorian movie, and it's going to be titled The Mandalorian and Grogu. Jon Favreau is directing. He's going to be joined by Dave Filoni and Kathleen Kennedy in producing. That is quite the powerhouse trio to produce. Also, this announcement says it is going into production this year. This movie is going into production in 2024. That raises some questions, because up till this point, what we had been told was the Rey movie was the next movie to go into production. So the Rey movie was supposed to be starting production this year. I was talking to a guy at work when this is all fresh news, where I'm like, does this mean they're doing 2 movies at the same time? Like, producing wise, they can probably afford it. They're fucking Lucasfilm. They got Disney behind them. They got plenty of money. But then even if they did it at the same time, it came down to the idea of, are they going to release 2 fucking movies in the same year? There's no way. So I didn't know what that meant. At this point right now, we still don't necessarily know. I might have some rumors in a bit to address that, but this is, as of now, is the most confirmed thing that this is going into production this year, is The Mandalorian and Grogu. Jon Favreau says, quote, I have loved telling stories set in this rich world that George Lucas created. The prospect of bringing The Mandalorian and his apprentice Grogu to the big screen is extremely exciting. So that's a cool quote from him. Kathleen Kennedy says Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have ushered into Star Wars two new and beloved characters, and this new story is a perfect fit for the big screen. Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to. I thought I had a thought there, but it's before I got in those last two quotes, and it's slipping my mind what I was meaning to say. Okay. The one thing I wanted to say, because I forgot to put that in the notes, but one thing I wanted to say is I think we covered this with Peter. Is there was some talk that when Bob Iger came back to Disney, that basically the rumors were that he basically got all of his heads together, the heads of Pixar and the heads of Lucasfilm and Marvel and all these things, and just said, you know what? We're a fucking movie company. We don't make television here. We make movies. So not to say that, and I don't think he was meaning that to say that like they can't make TV shows anymore. But what he was basically saying is like, we cannot prioritize television. We are a movie company. Things need to be movies. And, since then, we've seen a couple Marvel things transform from television shows into movies. And I remember telling Peter, and I don't remember if it was on the show or if it was just one-on-one, but if it wasn't, Peter can definitely attest that I said this to him, was, to me, the ultimate barometer of the level of truth to that rumor of Bob Iger's like edict would be Mandalorian, because Mandalorian is the most successful thing that Star Wars has done in the television realm, certainly, and I think it would compete with even the movies in terms of success. So like, you know, ultimately if they were to, you know, basically flip the Mandalorian to movie from television, to me that would be 100%, a 1000% confirmation that Bob Iger's like, you guys need to stop making fucking television shows and start making some fucking movies. And now it kind of, that my thought process is because even before this announcement came out, there had been some rumors that again, in light of that Bob Iger stuff, there was rumors that there was some work to develop to potentially drop season 4 of The Mandalorian and make a movie instead. And so I kind of wondered when this news dropped on January 9th, like, does this mean that Mandalorian season 4 is done for? In fact, Peter and Hayden, and Peter's wife were in a text group together. And when this news came out, I texted to him, I said, Mandalorian's season 4 isn't happening. It's a movie instead. I jumped the gun and said that, but I still wonder if that's the case. So then going on here at the end of this press release, it mentions the films in development from Sharmeen Obaidi-Chinoy, James Mangold, and Dave Filoni that are all announced. That those were all the ones that we heard announced at the last celebration. But this article does mention, or this press release does mention those, which is good because that proves that nothing has changed on the front of those movies. This is just adding something new in there. But then it just slides in there this little thing that says at the end that Ahsoka season 2 is now in development. So again, I think we had talked on the show a few times that after Ahsoka had aired, where we're like, we're pretty sure season 2 is going to happen, but why the fuck haven't they said that it's in development? Why wasn't there a stinger at the end of the credits of Ahsoka season 1 saying Ahsoka season 2 coming soon, whatever? It just felt like I was getting really nervous that we hadn't heard anything about season 2 yet. But now here we go, finally hidden at the very end of the press release about this Mandalorian movie is Ahsoka season 2 actually being confirmed and in production. Oh, you know what? I am an idiot. I got so up into the goddamn talking about this stuff, I forgot to show the art that went along with this press release. It is a picture of an exploding ship with Din Djarin and Grogu in his arms, or Baby Yoda, however you want to call him. I know his name's really Grogu, but he'll always be Baby Yoda. If they really wanted us to not call him Baby Yoda, they should have put a damn name tag on him like a dog and given us the name Grogu from episode 1. Otherwise, we are going to call him Baby Yoda. It is a picture of them flying out of an exploding ship. Din is kind of falling/flying, or falling with style if you're Buzz Lightyear, and he's holding Baby Yoda in his arm. Kind of a cool image for sure. Yeah, so that is, and also Mike mentioned earlier about Pedro Pascal, and I kind of alluded to we might have some stuff about him in the future. We had the casting announcements for Last of Us, but also with this, I kind of wonder now with an actual film, because I think a lot of people are under the aware, or have the awareness to know that Pedro has not really been on set much for The Mandalorian. If they haven't taken his helmet off, there's a stunt double that does the body work, and he has just been doing voice work and voicing the character. I wonder if that will change for a movie. I wonder if you've got a massive $200 million budget movie, if you're going to allow that to happen, or if Pedro is going to be roped into doing the movie here. I don't know. We'll see. Certainly he'll do the voice because he'll continue doing that, but I just wonder, under the armor, is it going to continue being the stunt guy that has been doing it for a while, or is it going to be Mr. Pedro Pascal. All right, so that is that one. Let me go ahead and get the next one ready because I've got to change the picture because it was the Deadpool crotch photo, because it's weird. It's like this like image thing, but I just have multiple images I can slide through, so I have to like make sure they're prepped. So the next one here is a fun one. At the Golden Globes, Mark Hamill and Natalie Portman met for the first time, I believe. At the Golden Globes, Mark took a picture, got a picture taken with her, and then captioned it, quote, "Now I have finally met my," quote, end quotes, "mother, thanks to at the Golden Globes." So, yes, Mark Hamill and Natalie Portman, that is, of course, Luke Skywalker, and Padme, his mother. So, kind of cool to see for us in-universe fans. It's cool to see the two actors together there because, I mean, of course, we would never see Natalie Portman looking like that, meeting a Mark Hamill looking like that, but still, in our heart of hearts, that's mother and son there. So, gotta love that. Let's see. Next up, one other thing I wanted to mention about The Mandalorian. I knew I had something else in my head. I saw a tweet where somebody kind of showed some really cool images that they've done over the 3 seasons of Mandalorian that were just like top level shit. And they said, just think, they've done The Mandalorian now for $40 million per season. So that's stretching budgets pretty far, and we've gotten some of this some incredible things like this, and it showed some really striking images throughout the course of The Mandalorian. They said, imagine what this same crew is going to do with a $200 million budget. I cannot fucking wait. It was something along the lines of those of that is what the person tweeted, and I gotta say, I fucking agree, man. Mandalorian has killed it in production value, and I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with a massive budget and what it's going to look like on a big screen, because I've bitched to about that a bit over the couple years. Is like, I remember after the season 2 finale where Luke showed up, is I told someone, I'm like, there's 2 things. One, I want to see that on the big screen because I want to see it on the big screen because Star Wars is meant to be seen on the big screen. But 2, the fan reactions. Like, I want to be in a movie theater with 500 people, 300 people, whatever the size of the theater is, when he takes that fucking hood off and it's Luke Skywalker. Like, there's an element of losing some really magical moments to me by sitting in this fucking office with the TV over here watching it by myself. Like, I give me, and I still think there's a business case to be made for theaters to start playing like certain streaming shows in their theaters, charge tickets, kick whatever up you need to the people that own the actual intellectual property, and allow someone to go pay a $7, $8, $9, $10, whatever it is ticket to go to a movie theater and watch The Mandalorian season 2's finale or whatever else. I don't know. It just feels like that should be a thing. Next up, let me make sure I got the right headline here. This one is a rumor that Mandalorian and Grogu, the movie, could be the start of a trilogy. And again, this is just a rumor, but the rumor also goes so far as to say the trilogy would also include the Dave Filoni movie. So that makes me wonder if the thought process is this Mandalorian and Grogu, you got another movie, and then you got the Dave Filoni movie as the third and final film, or is the Filoni movie the second one? There's going to be another movie after that. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things there. I do think kind of the Mandoverse, as some people are calling it. You got Mandalorian, Boba Fett, what am I blanking on? Ahsoka. You've got some of these shows that have all kind of spawned out of the Mandalorian, and it feels like they're all interconnected in a way. And I really think that their original idea was going to be something like Infinity War, where you'd have like, Boba Fett, Din Djarin, Ahsoka, like all these different characters coming together to fight Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I think with Bob Iger, kind of throwing that at him to make movies, that's been transformed into a movie. And I've got to say, hallelujah, because I cannot wait to see Grand Admiral Thrawn. I cannot wait to see Din Djarin. I can't wait to see Baby Yoda on a big screen in a theater, surrounded by fucking fans dressed like Jedi and stormtroopers, and all that. That's what I live for. So that's an interesting rumor. I'm definitely into that. Next up, let's see. The next one here is rumors are the Rey movie. There was rumors that the Rey movie was being delayed indefinitely, and the reasoning in the rumors was because the writer was having creative differences with Disney, but that has been 100% squashed. I think it was io9.com reached out to Lucasfilm, and they're like, no, like, it's fine, like, writer that's been writing it the whole time is we're waiting for him to turn in a draft as we speak. He's about to turn in his next draft. So it does sound like maybe with the fact that he's still turning in drafts makes me wonder if he's taking a little bit longer than they wanted, and maybe that's why Mandalorian and Grogu is being made now, and the Rey movie might have to delay a tiny bit, because ultimately if he's slow at getting the script done, they obviously can't go into production in May if the script's not finished. I know we're only talking in January, so that's even a speculation there that may not be things. I do not think that they're going to produce both films this year, or if they are, they're going to produce both films this year and they'll be released a year apart. But I think even that's a mistake. I think these movies need to be 2 years apart. Lucas always had at least 3 years between the movies. I think having a movie every year is a mistake. I think that's oversaturating the market a bit, and I think you need to stay 2 to 3 years as your absolute sweet spot for between films. So I don't know how that all works out, but there was rumors out there, and I wanted to address that. I think that's what I kind of alluded to last time, that there was some Star Wars news that I really wanted to save for the next episode, because because of the whole thing about me delaying the show, whatever. But this is one of them, though, is there was all this rumors, because everyone's kind of jumping on some hate on the director of the Rey movie for stupid reasons, and they're all trying to invent shit that this movie's not going to happen or whatever, and it's all absolute fucking bullshit. It is happening, still moving forward. I just want to address it, at least from the fact to address that it's all false. The next one here is, where are we at? Yes. The rumor is that Lucasfilm is developing a Star Wars What If. This is huge for me. When I first heard this, I fucking lost my mind a little bit. What If has obviously been the Marvel show based on the Marvel comic book, where it allowed them to kind of play outside of the reality of the Marvel universe to kind of do what ifs. What if Steve Rogers died and Bucky became Captain in the earliest days became Captain America. There was all kinds of weird comic book shit they did. It was just kind of a fun creative exercise. Ever since the show has hit on Disney Plus, it's become bigger into the larger pop culture purview. People have speculated what Star Wars What If look like. I kind of bought into those, but the second I saw this rumor that it was actually potentially in development, my biggest question was, what are the what ifs you do, though? I don't because I feel like almost all of them fixate upon like the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire, right? Like, what if Anakin doesn't turn? What if Obi-Wan turned? One of the things I saw was it was Vader. He had like the Vader suit, but it was still Hayden Christensen's head, so it's like he didn't get burned. I don't know why he'd still be in the suit. That's kind of dumb. But I didn't like that part of it. But the other part of it was Obi-Wan Kenobi was in a Grand Admiral uniform with the white, and he had like the cape like Ben Mendelsohn's character in Rogue One. And then you had God, was it Ahsoka? I think the third character is Ahsoka, but she was wearing like an Imperial uniform as well. So basically, I think it was implying a what if all three of that main Clone Wars crew, those three all went with the Empire. And I think I just feel like so many of the fixations are on that. Because I've been trying to rack in my brain about what ifs would I want to see. What if Luke joined the Imperial Academy? Maybe that would be interesting. What if Luke turned in Bespin and joined Vader? There is some what ifs, I guess. I just don't think it's as rich of a what if environment as Marvel is potentially. Because I just think with Marvel you got a million characters, you got so many different crucial moments, and I think with Star Wars there's only a few very crucial moments, and it would be interesting to see what they would actually do if this show comes to fruition. But I'm interested because I love to me there's nothing geekier than hanging out with a bunch of friends, probably around some sodas or like adult beverages and some pizza, and having conversations like that. Like, what does it look like if Anakin doesn't turn to the dark side? Like, I've had conversations like that. Like I've said before, I said it earlier as Peter and I, or maybe I said that in the hangout for Dark Tower Palaver. Somewhere in today recording, I said that Peter and I have been podcasting for 20 something years. We only turned on microphones 8 years ago. And we've had so many conversations, and honestly, we probably had conversations at length about what if Anakin doesn't turn, or what if Anakin beats Obi-Wan, still turns, but beats Obi-Wan and is in his full potential as a Sith Lord, and he doesn't lose any more limbs or any more human flesh. Because the living force is going to be stronger through a living creature than a creature that's mostly machine rather than man. He's going to be weaker in that state. So what if it's that? There's so many cool what ifs I think you could do, but the more I really started to think out, like, okay, if I was going to plot out like 10 episodes, what would they be? I think I got like maybe 5, and I was like, shit, I have no more fucking ideas. I don't know. So I mean, well, I guess because I guess so many of them revolve around Revenge of the Sith. That was my thing. Is because I kept coming up with them, like, okay, what if Yoda kills Palpatine? What if the Jedi do take over? Like, what is that? I mean, there's so many different but I think so many of them are on that crucial fucking like span of time. I don't know how many days or whatever the Revenge of the Sith takes place over, but it's like all within that compressed time. I mean, I guess what if the rebellion gets wiped out at Yavin, and the Death Star blasts Yavin to bits and the rebellion is crushed? Yeah, I guess there was some what ifs. You just really got to dig for them, I think. I don't know. Very, very interesting stuff though. All right. So Mike says, what if there wasn't the rule of 2? That would be a really interesting one too. Yeah. Because that's always been one I've always wondered too. It's like, wouldn't like an army of fucking Sith Lords? I mean, I get like the old EU explanation was that Sith Lords are inherently like self-destructive and they're all going to betray each other, and so having too many of them almost becomes like self-defeating. But there is an element of like, dude, like what we saw in Attack of the Clones, when you saw fucking 40 Jedi rushing across that goddamn Geonosis battlefield, side by side carrying lightsabers, dude, like that had me fucking geeking the fuck out in theaters back in 2002. And it makes me wonder, the inverse of that. What does it look like when you've got, the Sith, like 50, 60, 100 Sith running across a field in black with their red lightsabers? Off the top of my head now, I just thinking about it, I just dawned on me too. What if the Siege of Mandalore doesn't happen? What if the Mandalorians somehow beat the Empire and stay like independent of the Empire and they're not destroyed by the Empire? I don't know. There's some interesting ideas for sure. What if Han Solo dies? Was another one I just thought of. What if Han Solo dies in the carbonite? It doesn't. What if it kills him? That's an interesting one. Yeah, there's some. Well, I really hope the show comes through though, because I'd be interested to see what some really creative motherfuckers come up with for that show. Next up. That one's the one we're covering. Mike says, what if Greedo's a better shot? Yeah, that's true. Because then Obi-Wan and Luke don't get off of Tatooine. I guess unless Chewie did it for him. But yeah, no, there is that's definitely one too. See, that's what I have to do is I'd have to like just like go through and like watch the 6 Lucas movies especially, and just really like think about what if in my head as it was going through. I mean, I guess what if Anakin loses the pod race and he's not freed? Episode 2, I mean, what if Padme is killed at one of the points, one of the assassination attempts happens and works? I don't know. What if another one that I've always liked is what if Obi-Wan actually joins Dooku in that offer in episode 2? Because the thing that always gets me, man, is why does Dooku literally tell him the truth about everything? I've always wondered, like, yes, he's technically asking him to join the Sith, but it's like, is the idea then to kill Palpatine and then become more of a, like, political idealist Sith, maybe he wants to overthrow all the corruption. I don't know. Dooku's an interesting motherfucker. I want to know more about him, and it'll be interesting to see, like, yeah, what if Obi-Wan joined him? What would that look like? Mike says the best lie is composed of the truth. Yeah, but there's no way for Obi-Wan to have known that was the truth, though. It just seems weird to me that, like, if your whole plan is to turn Obi-Wan for the benefit of Palpatine, why would you then reveal all of Palpatine's secrets to him, essentially? The only thing he doesn't say is that, the Sith Lord is fucking Sheev Palpatine from Naboo, the fucking Supreme Chancellor. Yeah, I don't know. I think Dooku's just always been a fascinating character for me, because even earlier in the movie when Padme accuses Dooku being the one that's behind her assassination attempts, and Mace Windu says he's a political, Micaiah Mundi says he's a political idealist, not a murderer, and then Mace Windu says he was once a Jedi. It's not in his character to murder anyone. And not to say that part of it is true. But that, because we obviously do see him kill people. He killed Yaddle in the new Tales of the Jedi cartoon, which is incredible, by the way. But I don't know. I think that Dooku's one of the more complex characters, and I would love to know more about him. And maybe in a what if situation, we can see what that looks like. Next one, and this is an interesting one in light of the new True Detective. Jodie Foster has been on the circuit, and Jodie Foster was on a late night show, and she confirmed that she was indeed offered the role of Princess Leia in 1976. So this is an interesting one. Before I even get into the quote, because if I remember right, she is a little bit younger than Carrie Fisher. So the what ifs behind this just reverberate. Of course, there's all kinds of like thoughts and theories. Like, did Lucas? I don't think Lucas knew that Leia was the twin sister. I guess she would have just become the younger sister, maybe, which then would have changed the entire prequel trilogy because they couldn't have been twins born at the same time. But if Jodie Foster was offered it, if she was younger than Leia, it would have probably put Leia closer to like, my guess would be 14 something years old instead of 19. So yeah, does that mean that Mark Hamill is cast as Luke? I don't know. There's all kinds of weird things there, but she was asked if she was offered the role. That's been a rumor for a long time. And she replied, quote, I was, yeah. They were going for a younger Princess Leia, but I had a conflict. I was doing a Disney movie, and I just didn't want to pull out of the Disney movie because I was already under contract. And then she goes on and says, quote, and they did an amazing job. I don't know how good I would have been. I might have had a different hair. I may have had different hair. I might have gone with a pineapple. So, oh yeah. That of course, humor. Jodie Foster is a fucking absolute treasure. Mike says Anthony Hopkins is Tarkin. I actually thought about Hopkins in one sense, is that if she was Princess Leia, I would 100% guarantee she does not get the role of Clarice Starling in Silence of the Lambs. I think her entire career trajectory would change, and I do not think that she would be in the same. I don't know. I don't know for sure that Jonathan Demme was trying to go for a little bit lesser known, but I just wonder that I don't know. I just don't see. Someone, I just try to picture like someone with Carrie Fisher's like legendary fucking role as Leia, what she ends up being in the early 90s. I just don't think there's any way that they offer that same role to her. So it would have upset one of the greatest performances of all time for both Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs. Without having the two together, probably Anthony Hopkins would still be there, but I doubt Jodie Foster would be if she had been Leia as well earlier in her life. Next up, we've got a rumor that the Rey movie is not just one film. Rey's return is not just one film. So we know that she's coming back for the one film for sure. But the rumor that is now out there is that she is potentially going to be hitting more things. She's going to be out in some other projects. As the confirmed movie is being written, or as it's being written, rumors are floating that Daisy Ridley is also going to be more than the one film. One rumor is that she might figure into the Sean Levy film. Sean Levy just recently wrapped Deadpool 3, but then he's also signed on to direct a couple episodes of the final season of Stranger Things before he can start working on his very mysterious Star Wars project. Nobody knows anything about it. That hasn't been talked about at Celebration or anything, but there have been, I believe it's been confirmed that he is in developing a Star Wars movie. And there's, I guess the rumor is that would be a New Republic, New Republic era is like the Mandalorian era. So I don't know what you'd call it. The post-sequel trilogy era. I think the rumors have maybe thought that maybe Sean Levy's film would be up in that area. So the rumors also are that the Mandalorian film will be around the Christmas of next year, and Rey's movie will come out after that, with the Mangold movie coming out after that, and then Filoni's movie coming out after that. That's all just rumor, but that's the way that people think that it's going to break out, is Mando, Rey, James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi, and then Filoni's New Republic movie, the Thrawn movie, as I'm thinking of it as. So and then we've got one last thing before we wrap here. It is Daisy Ridley has some quotes on her new movie, the new Star Wars movie. So we've already heard her talk previously. She said, quote, it is not what she expected. And we also heard her say, quote, it is something very special. So those are things we already have on record from her talking about the upcoming Rey movie. Going on here, recently she did an interview with Variety, and she was asked how the franchise's first female director will impact the film, and she said, quote, the short answer, I don't know. I'm excited to do the job, but not because Charmin is a woman. Her documentaries are amazing. Her idea for the story is cool as shit. No spoilers, but she gave me a rundown of the entire story. If it weren't amazing, I would have been like, quote, okay, call me in 5 years. But it's worthwhile. So it sounds like she was very much willing to just tell Disney to go pound sand if they didn't have a good idea for her. And she's ready to just basically tell them fuck off come back in 5 years and give me another, shoot me something else. But it sounds like this offer, whatever the role that Charmin has in mind for this movie, and the writer that's writing it for her, was enough to lure Daisy back into this a little bit sooner than maybe she was originally planning on it. So that is really exciting to hear. I love, again, just to recap, she says her quote, her idea for the story is cool as shit. Gave me an entire rundown. If it weren't amazing, I would have been like, okay, call me in 5 years, but it is worthwhile. That I just want to restate that because it's exciting. I can't wait to see what we have in store. Again, like we talked about earlier, and Mike chimed in too, with Star Trek, the most frustrating thing is Star Trek keeps fucking dwelling in the past and there's nothing moving forward. Well, suddenly we're in a realm where Star Wars is like, hey, we're going way fucking forward, man. Like, we're talking about the fall of Palpatine, like the new, like Rey's new Jedi Order is probably going to be a thing. That's like fucking completely uncharted, man. I can't wait. Like, there's no more legacy characters, big legacy characters. I mean, I guess Lando's still around. You got 3PO, R2. You got like, but Chewbacca. But you don't have like Han, Luke, Leia. You don't have the big three or anything. So there's a lot of unknown. But then the last thing, she was asked if it would be weird making a movie without Adam Driver, John Boyega, or Oscar Isaac. And I do think the questioner here is being coy and being clever and trying to trap her into confirming if anybody else is going to be involved. Of course, Adam Driver, we covered a few episodes back where he said that he is done with Star Wars. And I don't think he was saying that in a negative way of he didn't like Star Wars, but he's like, my character's dead. Like, I'm done. I've moved on, man. See you guys later. Like, my whole arc was began and ended. It's over for me. But of John Boyega and Oscar Isaac, I kind of wonder if the questioner is being a very clever motherfucker trying to get Daisy to tip her cards here. But she answers, quote, no, because I don't know what is what or who is who in the new movie. So much has happened for me since the Skywalker saga. I feel like a grown-up now. When I first started, I was like 20. I was the youngest person on set. It took me the first 2 Star Wars films to feel really worthy of being there, which I gotta pause and say is fucking heartbreaking because she did an incredible fucking job. Even in the first movie, she blew me away. She was incredible, and it's really sad to see. And I guess I know I'm pausing in the middle, or I'm gonna, if I remember my tangent, I have a little bit of a tangent, but then I'm gonna finish her quote first. She says, now I'm in my 30s. The whole thing feels quite different. I've been able to work with other filmmakers, and hopefully I've gotten better as a performer. So, and I think she has probably, she's gotten better even over the course of the Skywalker saga, even if I wasn't a fan of the last movie as much. I don't think her performance had any bearing on it. I think she did an incredible job. But that kind of reminded me, there was also a quote that came out over the last number of weeks where she basically said that, she was like, during the making of those 3 movies, especially the earlier 2, that she was basically like, kind of like in her head crying, thinking that she was ruining everything and stuff. And it's just so fucking heartbreaking, man, that like she had all that on her. And I really hope none of that came from any fucking toxic motherfucking fan cunts, because like she is awesome. And just the idea that like, someone is being so psychologically like hounded, probably her own self-doubt, but like the fact that anybody from the outside would actually add to that is just absolutely fucking like infuriating to me. Because she did an incredible job. I think she was one of my favorite aspects of the new trilogy. I think her and Adam Driver, not to say I didn't love John Boyega or Oscar Isaac or some of the other characters, but I just think Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley were the standouts for me. And I think both of them did an incredible job. Both of them really set themselves in my mind. I know that Adam Driver did some TV, was it Girls or something first show, so he was kind of known by some people, but I think he's like an all-star now, and I think largely because of his performance there. Daisy Ridley's done some other stuff, and I'm really happy to see her getting some more success, because I think she did an incredible job. And whatever failings I feel about the sequel trilogy, and it's not the entire trilogy, but all the negative vibes I have, which are there, but they're not nearly as much as some people, I will talk about it at some point at length, but I don't hate the sequel trilogy. But one negativity I have, none of it is directed to the actors. I think all the actors did an incredible job. I don't think there was one spot where I was pulled out of the movie because like, oh God, that person sucks in this. Like this, sometimes you get those. I never had that in these movies. So heartbreaking to hear that Daisy had some I guess mental trauma, even, and again, I really hope it's all just internal and it was all just like what do you call it, I'm blanking on the title or the name of the thing, imposters syndrome, where you think no matter what, like, I mean, I've heard it with actors, I've heard it with Hollywood writers, I've heard it with like fucking scientists. Like, there's people of all realms. Like, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. And there's just this idea of, I'm an imposter, I don't belong here, someone's gonna find out I don't know, I'm not good enough, and they're gonna expose me. And there's just this fear, and I think that happens with everyone. So I'm really hoping all of the stuff that she talked about, I know I don't have the full quote here to refer to, but she talked about being pretty emotionally distraught. I hope it was all just the imposter syndrome and none of it was coming from seeing what so-called fans were saying, because she did a great job. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Looking at the 2 hour and 26 minute runtime as of what YouTube is saying, I'm very glad we didn't try Coen Brothers, because it was weird. I knew I left some news out because I didn't want to like cannibalize all the news that happened in the intervening week, but also there's a shitload of news this week. So by the time I got it all compiled, I was like, dude, this is like a full fucking episode. So even a little bit over normal time for an episode. So I just knew there wouldn't be time for it. So let me go ahead and let's see. Next time on is I guess I have this out of order. Technically, we do the email first, so I guess I'll do that. Let's do the email first. The email, if you want to email the show, if you have any thoughts, feedback, response, just whatever, anything you have. I want you to be part of the show, like Mike here is in the live chat. But if you're listening and you want to be part of the conversation even after the fact, I'll always circle back to something. If you have thoughts on something, if you don't agree with something I said, you agree with something I said, whatever it is, you have a show idea, you want my thoughts on something, send it. It's Tad, T-A-D-D, at geekeryabides.com. Shoot an email over there at any time, and you can be part of the show even if you can't join live. So that is the email. And then next time, I will indeed, 2 weeks from now. I do want to point out, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, I do want to do the live stream. I'm going to change it to, because I'm testing out some different things. I want to test out Saturday night, so I actually have episode... Oh, you know what? My little thing down there is wrong. It says episode 24. That is obviously wrong. I am, of course, talking about episode 27. I guess I have not updated that for a while. There we go, 27. Episode 27 is going to be live on February 10th, 2024, which is a Saturday at 7 p.m. Mountain. Actually, I think I set that for 6:30. So I'm going to change that here real time as well. The YouTube is right now. I did set up the live stream in advance, so it will show there. But I do believe I have it set up for 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time. So I'm going to test out. I'm just trying to test out what works out. What kind of hit today was I had the Patreon hangout for Dark Tower Palaver. I had to record that, and I only had like an hour and a half between until I did this. I'm not really a fan of that. But I did throw it out to the Patreon people on Dark Tower Palaver to see kind of like what they feel about times and see if that's something that is movable, if there's something that works better for them. And if that is the case, and like I can potentially move back to Friday. I just want to test out a couple things before I really solidify what I want to do in the this new period without Peter. Of course, if when things normalize out, if Peter's able to come back and join us, I really hope so. We'll probably move back to having him back to back. That's not a big deal. That's mostly for his convenience, so it's like convenient for him and not taking up way too much time. But while it's just me, it's a lot to talk for 4 hours or 5 hours if we go 2.5 hours like this. It's hard to do. And so I'm going to try this where we do Dark Tower Palaver normal time. Gives me a couple hours between. I can go grab some food or whatever, and then come back, do the Geekery Abide. So I'm going to test that next episode, and then from there we'll decide future bound where this show is going to be. Like, I know that sucks to be kind of bouncing around like this, but I'm trying to figure out what works best. And so yeah, experimentation. So yeah, that is what we have planned. So Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you want to join live, that is when I'll be going live next time for Geekery Abides here. We'll be covering the Coen Brothers, just like nothing hardcore in depth, like we're not going to spend the whole time on like Big Lebowski, as much as I love that movie. But I just kind of want to go through and hit. I will admit up front, I haven't seen every Coen Brothers movie. In fact, I probably maybe not seen more than I have actually seen, but I want to talk about the stuff that I've seen because they are an incredible set of filmmakers, and they made some pretty incredible films, and I just want to geek out on them for a bit. So that will be what we got coming next time. I do know also I want to potentially talk about Echo at some point in the future as well, so that might be coming up as well. So yeah. But that'll do it for this episode. I will sign off, as I always do, by saying love what you love. To hell with anyone that wants you to feel bad about that. Let your geek flags fly high. And I will see you guys in a fortnight plus a day, technically, since we're going to be going from Friday today to Saturday in 2 weeks. So fortnight plus a day. I'll be back for a live stream. Join me if you can. And if not, check out the YouTube. If you want to find the YouTube videos, are always here. If you don't join live, you can always come back and watch them in the future. Subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. Also throw comments in if you're not joining live. If you want to be part of the conversation, drop some comments. I'll try to engage with those as well. Yeah, that's or find me on your normal podcasting feed as well. But yeah, see you guys in a couple weeks. All right. Thank you, Mike, for joining me. I know there's at least one other person that's been here for the last probably hour at least or so that I noticed it said 2. We had that spammer that came in that showed 3 and then kicked that person and it showed 2. So somebody else might be in here just listening silently. So whoever was the silent listener, thank you as well. But thank you, Mike. Love having you as part of the conversation. Whether it's helping me out on something I'm forgetting, giving me ages of Pedro Pascal, the name of the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, wonderful movie with a very long title. Mike says that was Flag. The other listener is Flag. Yes, that is potentially the case. Although I did hear some crows out earlier today when I was going out to my car. Pretty much there's a window over here and it was that way of the window. So like kind of literally where I'm facing is a tree outside my house, and I heard some crows out there. So if Flag's listening, I don't know if he's on the live stream or if he's just maybe right outside this window here listening. I haven't heard any tapping, but I do know that is something to be aware of. I mean, of course, I'm never going to pull a rifle on a crow that's lovingly tapping my window. I would, of course, bow to him and say my life for him because he's awesome. But yeah, thank you, Mike. And then silent listener, whoever, and then not the spammer though. To hell with spammers. That's only happened. I think this is only the second time it's ever happened. The time we've been on YouTube, but whatever. But yeah, see ya in 15 days for the next episode or Dark Tower Palaver tomorrow. All right, see ya.